Chapter 1194. Zhang Xiaohua giggled. Second brother, don't trick me. How can I say the password? You know it's inappropriate. Do you want me to say it myself? Zhang Xiaohu blurted out. What password? Guo Sufei was puzzled when she heard this. Mother, you'd better ask Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohu had already determined that this girl was Zhang Xiaohua. Seeing her mother looking at her, Zhang Xiaohua said embarrassedly, "It's nothing. I'm just joking with second brother." All the more reason to say it. Who knows if you're right? Zhang Xiaolong, who was next to her, heard that it was a joke and unconsciously became spirited. Then. Well, my disciple, prepare a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone for your master. Yes. Yes, your disciple will go now. Two voices sounded and ran out at the same time. Not long after, Xiaohua Ji came in with a brush and ink, and Shui Tian Ji came in with a paper. Zhang Xiaohua giggled and looked at Zhang Xiaohu. She picked up the brush and wrote 2 lines of words on the paper like crabs. I love you, Chen Chen. I love you, Chang'e. Ah. Everyone was shocked, then they laughed. They saw Zhang Xiaolong laughing so hard that he almost held his stomach. Even Lu Qian, who was hugging Zhang Bairen, was laughing so hard that she was swaying back and forth. Zhang Kai, Mr. Lu, and Guo Sufei endured the extreme pain and insisted on not letting themselves laugh out loud. Chang'e and Chen Chen, however, blushed and stared at Zhang Xiaohu fiercely. Zhang Xiaohu was extremely wronged, with a look of "What does this have to do with me?" After a long time, everyone stopped laughing. Zhang Xiaolong said, "Don't identify it. If this is not Xiaohua, who is Xiaohua?" Ha ha ha. Everyone seemed to recall those 2 sentences. Zhang Xiaohu blushed and looked at Zhang Xiaohua bitterly. Zhang Xiaohua was also innocent. She rolled her eyes and looked at Zhang Xiaohu, as if to say, "Who told you not to believe that I am Zhang Xiaohua? Who can you blame?" After a long time, everyone calmed down. Lu Qian looked at Zhang Xiaohua's face and said, "However, this is also good. You look more handsome than before. I'm afraid that you will attract the attention of many girls." This time, it was Zhang Xiaohua's turn to be unhappy. Sister-in-law. I used to be very unpopular. Hee, that's true. Zhang Xiaohu finally got the chance and laughed. Zhang Kai and Guo Sufei also laughed. Oh, by the way, Xiaohua, where's your disciple? After laughing for a while, Zhang Xiaohu asked, "The 2 disciples I sent have not returned yet. Have you found them?" Hee, not only that. Zhang Xiaohua was also afraid that everyone would be confused about her appearance. She quickly changed the topic and said, "I not only found Chu Jing, but also saw Li Jinfeng, young Master Li." Young Master Li? Why did he go to Dragon Mountain? Zhang Xiaohu was very curious. He is a weak scholar. Why is he not studying at home? Zhang Xiaohua deliberately looked at Qiu Tong, who was beside O Yen. She saw that there was a hint of curiosity in her eyes. She smiled and said, "This has something to do with Sister Qiu Tong." Me? Qiu Tong was stunned. She pointed at her own nose and asked, "Young Master Li and I have only met a few times. How can we be related?" When O Yen heard this, her eyes turned a few times. She seemed to have thought of something. "By the way, second brother, not only did I meet young Master Li, I also, I met your Misty School's founder's old lover." Ah! You actually went to the bottom of Worryless Lake? Zhang Xiaohu was shocked and almost jumped up. What? You also know about Senior Yang's private matters? Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. However, she immediately thought that since Zhang Xiaohu could see Yang Haoya's primordial spirit projection, it was normal for him to know about these matters. "Xiaohua, this is Founder Yang's private matter." I didn't tell you. Zhang Xiaohu explained. You don't have to tell me. I know more than you. Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said. Oh, by the way, Founder Yang asked me to go to Worryless Lake and say something to Senior Yu. I wonder if Senior Yu, of course Senior Yu isn't here. Oh, by the way, I really don't know if she's here or not. I didn't go to the bottom of Worryless Lake. Zhang Xiaohua thought for a while and said, Disciple, make some tea. I want to tell you a story. Yes. Yes, Disciple will go now. Ji Xiaohua and Shui Tian both ran out. After the two of them made tea, Zhang Xiaohua drank 2 mouthfuls happily. Then, she told them about how she went to Dragon Mountain, met Li Jinfeng, and saved Li Jinfeng. Everyone nodded when they heard this. This Li Jinfeng was indeed chivalrous and courageous. Then, they looked at Qiu Tong, who was blushing and shy. Moreover, her eyes were shining with splendor and surprise. In their hearts, they added another affectionate evaluation. Then, Zhang Xiaohua told them about how she met the projection of Yu Mingxin's soul in Worryless City. Sigh, everyone listened as if they were listening to a story. This was a love story between immortals from tens of thousands of years ago. There was sweetness, separation, and hatred in it, continued the tea. Disciple Zhang Xiaohua shouted just as Yu Mingxin was determined to go out and fight. Before Ji Xiaohua and Shui Tian could stand up, Nie Qianyu quickly placed her cup in front of Zhang Xiaohua and urged, Senior brother, what happened to Senior Yu in the end? Zhang Xiaohua looked at the cup that Nie Qianyu had used and saw the tears in Nie Qianyu's eyes. She smiled bitterly and said, what other ending could there be? Don't you know the ending? Back then, didn't you tell me in front of Worryless Lake? But, Senior brother, didn't you say that Senior Yu and Senior Yang's story was different from the rumors? Nie Qianyu asked anxiously. Yes. However, Nie Qianyu, you have to know that in this world, there are many ways to start a story, but, the ending, is sometimes only one way. Zhang Xiaohua said meaningfully. Nie Qianyu was obviously very concerned about the relationship between Yang Haoya and Yu Mingxin. She sighed and said, why is it so difficult to hope that people can be together for a long time? If there is no separation and misery, who would care about a happy reunion? Zhang Pinger also said, I didn't understand the meaning of Mo Xiong on Lingering Fragrance Peak until now. I finally understand that beautiful women are always ill-fated. That. Senior brother sect master, young Master Li, what about him? Hearing Zhang Xiaohua talking about Yang Haoya and Yu Mingxin, Yen also felt emotional, but in her heart, she seemed to be more concerned about Li Jinfeng. She was too embarrassed to ask, so she stopped herself several times. Yen and Qiu Tong were like sisters, so she naturally knew what she was thinking. She smiled and patted Qiu Tong's hand, asking Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua saw that Qiu Tong's face was so red that it was about to drip blood, and she was overjoyed. Young Master Li's spring was not far away. Thus, she told him about her departure with young Master Li, how young Master Li insisted on bringing Miss Mei's body back for burial, and how she met Yuan Chongqing of the Lotus Escort Agency and the 2 disciples of the Misty School. Hearing that Zhang Xiaohua actually met an old acquaintance, Zhang Xiaohu laughed and said, I knew it, the disciples I sent out are all abnormally capable, and can't be careless. So, they also searched Dragon Mountain for a long time, but that Chu Zhigao hid too well, so they couldn't find him. Oh? Yuan Chongqing actually became the head of the escort agency? I didn't hear about this before. Later, I'll get someone to invite him over. When we were at the Lotus Escort Agency, we got along quite well. Oh, right, Xiaohua, where's that little disciple of yours called Chu Jing? Zhang Xiaohu suddenly remembered, and looked left and right. Where are your 2 disciples? Did they report to you? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and asked. No. Did they just come back, and haven't reported to the meeting hall yet? Zhang Xiaohu was stunned. Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, it's still early, they are still on their way. I'm afraid it'll be half a month before they come back. Ah. Zhang Xiaohu and the others were not surprised, but Chiu Tong was the first to exclaim, and then her face became hot again. Sister Chiu Tong, don't worry, Mr. Li, is with the escorts of the Lotus Escort Agency and the 2 disciples of the Misty School. There shouldn't be any danger. Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. I'm not worried about Mr. Li. I'm just thinking. Chiu Tong did not know what to say. Sister Chiu Tong is worried about Miss May's body. Nie Qianyu smiled and said. Chiu Tong immediately said, yes. Although it's the 12th lunar month now, but, the journey. It'll take dozens of days, I'm afraid, there won't be any problems. No, Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, since Mr. Li wants to do it, how can I not do my best? That's good. Chiu Tong touched her hot face and did not dare to say anything else. Xiaohua, Mr. Li is so kind, you should come back with him, Zhang Kai said. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, yes, father is right, but I have other things to do, so I have to leave early. Other things? Leave early? Nie Qianyu was stunned, then smiled and said, is it because of this that senior brother sect leader's face changed? Little fish Nie, you really have to. Zhang Xiaohua praised, then reached into her clothes and took out something. She smiled and said, everyone, look. What is this? The foot-long mansion guarding spiritual steel was in Zhang Xiaohua's hand, and it was emitting a faint colorful light. It looked very magical. What is this? Nie Qianyu did not know and asked softly. Xiaohua, where did you find this big blue stone? The blue stone on the southern slope of our Guizhuang house is not so square and bright. Zhang Xiaolong also asked in surprise. Zhang Xiaohua knew that the thing Zhang Xiaohua took out was definitely not ordinary, but he could not see anything unusual after looking around, so he coughed and said, Xiaohua. Are you going to establish a sect, to build a house? This, blue stone. Which kiln is it from? I'll send some disciples to buy more later. Consider it a congratulatory gift for your sect. Zhang Xiaohua was flustered and exasperated when she heard that. She shouted, what are you talking about? This is really casting pearls before swine. I have nothing in common with the two of you. Chapter 1195. That's right. Little dragon, little tiger, don't talk nonsense. Mr. Liu also scolded and said with a smile, Xiaohua, your jade is really good. There are golden threads on it. Where did you get it? Zhang Xiaohua slumped on the chair and moaned, please, this is the Yaoshan Immortal Mansion's mansion guarding spiritual tablet. Yaoshan Immortal Mansion? Mansion guarding spiritual tablet? Everyone was surprised and didn't understand what it meant. Gua Sufei pointed at the tablet and said, Xiaohua. What kind of mansion do you think this is? Is it for little black and little yellow? TSK, it's so delicate. It's really hard for you to find a skilled craftsman. Ah. Finally, there was someone who knew what was good. Zhang Xiaohu jumped in front of Zhang Xiaohua. His 2 big eyes were round and round. He was very surprised and said, Xiaohua. Could it be? Zhang Xiaohua was about to nod, but after hearing Zhang Xiaohu's words, she couldn't continue. Zhang Xiaohu said, could it be? In your hand. This is Yaoshan's immortal mansion. Zhang Xiaohua slapped his forehead and said helplessly, second brother, I do want to make the immortal abode a little bigger than this, but the immortal abode covers the entire Yao Mountain, and I don't have that much magical power. Oh, the Yaoshan Immortal Mansion has already appeared? Zhang Xiaohu heard and shouted again, why didn't you hear the disciples report it? And you didn't go to the Immortal Mansion to get some treasures and rob it. What are you doing sitting here? You have a big blue stone in your hand. What? What's the use of it? Wait, little tiger, what is this immortal mansion that Xiaohua is talking about? You better explain it clearly to us first. Zhang Kai was puzzled when he heard this and said loudly. Of course, Zhang Xiaohu and Zhang Xiaohua were well aware of it. Apart from Chang'e and Chen Chen, who else knew about Immortal Mansion? Oh, it's like this. Father, a few days ago, in the southwest sky, wasn't there a rainbow-colored light? Did you see it? Zhang Xiaohu thought for a moment and said. Yes, I saw it. I was talking to Mr. Liu about it. I'm afraid that some demon is about to descend. Zhang Kai nodded. Thus, Zhang Xiaohu told her about the rumors of the Immortal Mansion and the words of the Misty School's founder. Finally, he smiled and said, Isn't Xiaohua going to start a sect? He wanted to use Immortal Mansion as the gateway to Beta School, but later he found out that everyone in the world had their eyes on Immortal Mansion, so he gave up the idea and went to the south to pick up his disciple. Yes, you heard it just now. Then, what about now? Mr. Liu looked at Zhang Xiaohua and asked, You just said that Immortal Mansion has appeared. Presumably, there is already a result? Yes, Zhang Xiaohua said proudly, it was obtained by Beta School. Ah. Really? Nie Qianyu and the others couldn't believe it, but seeing Zhang Xiaohua's tail wagging, they all cheered. This is Immortal Mansion. Zhang Xiaolong pointed at the life-guarding spiritual steel again. Brother, I told you that Yaoshan Immortal Mansion is on Yaoshan Mountain. This is just a life-guarding spiritual steel. Zhang Xiaohua said helplessly. But, why didn't you stay on Yaoshan Mountain to look after your cave? Why did you come back? Zhang Xiaolong blamed her naturally. If it was occupied by others, who would we find to reason with? Then, realization dawned on him. Oh, I understand. You came back to find someone to guard the door. That's not right, Xiaohua. I sent disciples out, and they came back every day. They didn't hear any news of Yaoshan Immortal Mansion's appearance. Could it be? Looking at her two brothers, Zhang Xiaohua shrugged and said to her eldest brother, Big brother, Immortal Abode isn't a place that just anyone can enter. Now, Immortal Abode belongs to the Big Dipper sect. Unless I, the founder of the Big Dipper sect, agree, no one can enter. So, I didn't come back to find you to guard the door. Then, she said to Zhang Xiaohu, second brother, Immortal Mansion's appearance was yesterday. I'm afraid you won't receive the news until tomorrow. That's right. It's no wonder that the inner disciples of the fragrant cult didn't mention it yesterday. Zhang Xiaohu also realized, I forgot about the fact that you can fly. Inner disciples of fragrance cult? Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. What are they doing here? Zhang Xiaohu looked at Oh Yen and smiled. This matter, let's talk about it later. It's about Misty School and fragrance cult. Senior brother sect leader, since Immortal Mansion is already ours, you, the mansion guarding spiritual steel in your hand, what is it? Zhang Pinger asked with joy. Mansion guarding spiritual steel, as the name suggests, it's a steel used to suppress Immortal Mansion. Shui Tian interrupted. Oh, I know. Ji Xiaohua, who had always been quiet, shouted. It's the same as the stone steel in the temple that suppressed the old turtle. Damn, what's going on? Zhang Xiaohua was a little anxious and said loudly, it has nothing to do with that, whatever old turtle. This mansion guarding spiritual steel is used to control Immortal Mansion. Control Immortal Mansion? What's the use of it? Guo Sufei was even more puzzled. The place where we live needs to be controlled. Yes, whether it was the small courtyard of the Zhang family in Guozhuang House or the courtyard in Huanxi Villa, they all needed to be controlled. Senior brother sect leader, this thing is the key to Immortal Mansion. Oh Yen was worthy of being the owner of Huanxi Villa. She knew the use of the key very well and hit the nail on the head. Yes, it is. Zhang Xiaohua slapped her thigh. He, can I have a look? Nie Qianyu laughed. Here, isn't it easy to have a look? Zhang Xiaohua said and handed over the mansion guarding spiritual steel. The 1-foot square mansion guarding spiritual steel looked very heavy. Nie Qianyu used all her strength to take it, but, when she grabbed it with both hands, her hands actually went through the middle of the mansion guarding spiritual steel as if there was nothing there at all. Ah! This! Nie Qianyu was stunned and almost fell down. She had used all her strength to take it. Oh, how could this be? Zhang Xiaohua was also stunned. But when she reached out to touch it, the mansion guarding spiritual steel was still there. There was no change. Let me see. Oh Yen also came forward and touched it with her hand. However, she also grabbed nothing. She didn't get anything. Zhang Xiaolong and the others were also curious. Everyone touched it, but no one caught it. It seemed that only Zhang Xiaohua could touch it. It's weird, weird. After touching it with his hand, Mr. Liu pinched his beard and smiled. It's really a mortal mansion. This key is also different from ordinary ones. Well, only Master can hold it. Others can't steal it. This immortal mansion will always belong to Beta School. Ji Xiaohua said. Master, Master. Behind Zhang Xiaohua, Zhang Bairen, who had been holding a small stick, came over to poke Zhang Xiaohua with the stick again. Seeing the mansion guarding spiritual steel, Zhang Bairen's eyes lit up. He threw the stick aside and grabbed it with one hand. Everyone else's hand was empty, but Zhang Bairen's hand was holding the corner of the mansion guarding spiritual steel. Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. She loosened her hand and let it fall down a little. Unexpectedly, the mansion guarding spiritual steel didn't fall down like Zhang Xiaohua thought. Instead, it was firmly held in Zhang Bairen's hand. Zhang Bairen laughed and held this little thing with both hands. He was very happy. Then, something even more incredible happened. Zhang Bairen took the mansion guarding spiritual steel and put it into his mouth, which was full of saliva. He wanted to bite it. Bairen, this isn't for eating. Lu Qian was already used to it. She tried to block it as she spoke. She forgot that she couldn't touch the spirit steel. She swept her hand and the spirit steel was sent to Zhang Bairen's mouth. The mansion guarding spiritual steel shrank rapidly as it was sent to Zhang Bairen's mouth. In the blink of an eye, it was swallowed by Zhang Bairen and disappeared without a trace. Io, son. Lu Qian was shocked. This wasn't a small marble or a small piece of paper. This was a piece of limestone that was bigger than a limestone. Lu Qian jumped in fright and hugged Zhang Bairen. She quickly put Zhang Bairen's face down on her knees and used her other hand to hit Zhang Bairen's back. It looked like she wanted to hit the mansion guarding spiritual steel out of Zhang Bairen's stomach. When Zhang Xiaohua saw this, she was stunned at first. Then, she laughed as if she thought of something. She clapped her hands and said, "Ha ha ha, good, good. Bairen. You are indeed the first disciple of our Beta School. Xiaohua, stop fooling around. Bairen won't choke, right?" Lu Qian was about to cry. "Sister-in-law, don't worry. That spirit steel isn't much smaller than Bairen. If it was something normal, how could Bairen swallow it?" Zhang Xiaohua comforted her. "Io, that's right." Lu Qian came to her senses and carried Bairen. When she looked at Bairen carefully, she saw that Bairen was all smiles and seemed to be playing with something fun. How could he be in pain? "Bairen, spit it out." Lu Qian said angrily. "Mother." Byron's mouth twitched as if he was unwilling. "Good disciple, give it to Master. Master will bring you somewhere to play. There are better places." Zhang Xiaohua stretched out her hand and said with a smile. When Zhang Bairen heard that there were better places, his eyes lit up. He opened his mouth and spat out the mansion guarding spiritual steel into Zhang Xiaohua's hand. Zhang Xiaohua took the spirit steel and sighed. She put it into the money bag and said, "When the mansion guarding spiritual steel is refined to the end, it can be absorbed into the body. It's just that my cultivation is too low and I can't do it. I didn't expect Bairen to be able to absorb it into his body without refining it. Everyone was shocked. Especially Shui Tiantian. Nie Qianyu, Zhang Ping'er, and O Yen didn't have any objections to Zhang Bairen being the first disciple of Beta School. After all, they were considered Zhang Xiaohua's junior sisters. Ji Xiaohua didn't need to say anything. He already saw Zhang Bairen as a young master. However, Shui Tiantian was different. He used to be the first disciple of the Misty School's younger generation. He was definitely a candidate to be the first disciple of the Beta School. Although he was impressed by Zhang Xiaohua's immortal methods, he still had a grudge against a child who wasn't even 4 years old. At this time, he saw that the spirit steel that he couldn't touch was absorbed into Zhang Bairen's body. Even his master, Zhang Xiaohua, couldn't do it. He was convinced. The first disciple of the Beta School was Zhang Bairen. Please cast a monthly vote, please cast a recommendation vote, please collect, please tip, thank you. Chapter 1196. Xiaohua, how did the Yaoshan Immortal Mansion appear yesterday? How did you get it? Zhang Xiaohu asked enviously. It's like this. Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment, cleared her throat, and told her what happened at Yaoshan Immortal Mansion. Xiaohua, you said, you don't know? You just slept for a while and your face changed. Your hair is gone. Your eyebrows are gone too. Guo Sufei was still concerned about the changes in her youngest son's appearance. The Immortal Mansion was not as important as her son. Yes, mother, I don't know what happened. I'm very puzzled. This sentence was the truth, so Zhang Xiaohua answered honestly. Senior brother head, are you so bold? In front of the leader of the fragrance cult, the abbot of the Dalan Temple, the head of Between the Clouds and the Water, and the leader of the Righteous Alliance, you announced the establishment of Beta School? They actually congratulated our Beta School? Zhang Ping'er's eyes were full of little stars. Of course. Zhang Xiaohua straightened her somewhat thin chest and said, I'm the master of the Immortal Mansion. At that time, their lives were in my hands. If I was unhappy, I would take their lives. How would they dare to disobey? The Righteous Alliance lost hundreds of disciples at Yaoshan Immortal Mansion? Xiaohua, you're really ruthless. Zhang Xiaohu was more concerned about the Righteous Alliance. Actually, I didn't want to be so ruthless at first, but, after a while, I used the power of the Immortal Mansion to make them tell the truth. Only then did I know, these people, bullied men and women, humiliated the weak. When I thought of Mr. Li and Miss Mei, I got angry, so I killed them all. At the mention of this, Zhang Xiaohua said bitterly, I don't know how Lu Town is doing. Lu Town is very close to Yaoshan Immortal Mansion. Xiaohua, oh, should I call you Headren? You're already the head of Beta School. When will you take over Meng? Chang'e laughed. Nie Qianyu and Zhang Ping'er's faces were somewhat unnatural. Zhang Xiaohua said sadly, alas, we still have to wait. Our Beta School is still too weak. Master, when will we move to the Yaoshan Immortal Mansion? Ji Xiaohua plucked up her courage and asked. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua was also taken aback. He scratched his hairless head and said, Master didn't think about it. I just chased all the sect leaders down Yao Mountain this morning. Didn't I just come back? Yaoshan Immortal Mansion is not too far away, you see. Then, she looked at Guo Sufei and Zhang Kai and said, Dad, Mom, you two come with me. Second brother, has a lot of things to do. He's still the focus of all the sects in Jianghu. Maybe there will be some fights in the future. You're not safe here. Then, she thought of something and turned to Nie Qianyu and said, by the way, Nie Qianyu, Valley Master Nie is also in Yaoshan Immortal Mansion. He seems to be injured, but it's not very serious. I've already told him that you're in Misty School. He'll come over in a few days. That's great. Nie Qianyu finally breathed a sigh of relief. When she heard that Zhang Xiaohua was in Yaoshan Immortal Mansion, she had always wanted to ask about it. However, she knew that there were many people in Yaoshan Immortal Mansion and Zhang Xiaohua might not be able to meet her father. Now that she heard that her father was safe and sound, she was greatly relieved. Zhang Xiaohu thought for a moment and said to Zhang Xiaohua, "You're right. The Righteous Alliance suffered a loss because of you. I still have thousands of their disciples, which is very important to him. Soon, the Righteous Alliance will launch an attack on our Misty School. Mom, Dad, Mr. Liu, brother, and sister-in-law are no longer safe in Huanxi Mountain Manor. You'd better go to Yaoshan Immortal Mansion as soon as possible. You're not safe here. The Misty School is a place where all the heroes of Jianghu gather. It'll definitely raise a storm of blood." Zhang Xiaohua laughed. According to what you said, so many people died in Yaoshan Immortal Mansion. The entire Jianghu has been greatly weakened. Moreover, with the emergence of your Beidou school, it's estimated that in the next few years, everyone's eyes will be on your Beidou school. Who will care about small sects like ours? Zhang Xiaohu smiled bitterly. Perhaps only Chuanxiang cult and the Righteous Alliance will be unwilling. Then, when we go up Yaoshan Immortal Mansion, won't we be seen by the disciples of other sects? I'm afraid it'll bring trouble to Second Martial Uncle, right? Shui Tian frowned and said. Disciple, you don't have to worry about this. I have a good plan. Zhang Xiaohua patted her chest and said. Zhang Xiaohua talked non-stop for a long time. It was getting late and everyone's stomachs were rumbling with hunger. However, they didn't notice it because they were interested in listening. Now that Zhang Xiaohua stopped, they all realized it. Guo Sufei, Lu Qian, and Qiu Tong went to prepare the meal. O Yen was also about to go, but she was stopped by Zhang Xiaohu. "Miss O, I have something to ask you." "Oh?" O Yen was stunned and nodded. "Sect leader Zhang, there's no harm in asking." Zhang Xiaohu looked at Chang'e and then turned to Zhang Xiaohua and said, "Xiaohua, you come too. This is about Chuanxiang cult. Maybe you can give some advice." Zhang Xiaohua knew that this matter had nothing to do with her. She was just being used by her second brother to avoid suspicion, so she laughed and said, "Okay, I'm the most magnanimous person." And Zhang Xiaohu didn't care about Zhang Xiaohua's words. He glanced outside and said, "Come with me." Following Zhang Xiaohu to the pavilion outside, Zhang Xiaohua looked around and asked, "Second brother, do you want to keep it a secret? And it's best if you have any tricks." Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua stretched out her hand and placed a few jade talismans around the pavilion. She made a gesture and a silent restriction was casually placed by Zhang Xiaohua. The cultivation of the late stage of qi refining was really different from the middle stage of qi refining. If it was a few days ago, Zhang Xiaohua wouldn't be so relaxed. "Is it done?" Zhang Xiaohu asked. "Okay, you guys talk." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Do you need me to seal my ears?" "No need," Zhang Xiaohu said solemnly. Then he sat on a stone bench in the pavilion and looked at O Yen, saying, "Miss O, do you remember the 3 conditions you promised Abbess Jingyi at Lingxiang Peak's Mo Xian Palace?" O Yen blushed and nodded, "I remember." "Why?" Then she suddenly realized something and said in surprise, "Don't tell me, the fragrance cult wants my Misty School to cooperate with them?" Zhang Xiaohu nodded and said, "That's right. Yesterday, Abbess Jingyi sent an inner court disciple over with a decree. She wants our Misty School to fulfill our promise and make preparations to meet them at the right place at the right time." Saying this, the corner of his mouth curved into a bitter smile and said, "This. I was very confused. I only realized it after the inner court disciple left." O Yen looked at Zhang Xiaohua and also smiled bitterly. Faction leader Zhang. Know what Abbess Jingyi wants, but where and when, don't know. That's good. Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, "Because I talked to Xiaohua about this before, I also know a little. Although I don't know when, where, or what, I have a rough idea of who will be involved." After the inner sect disciple of the cult of incense left, I had a discussion with Elder Li. Elder Lu, Vice Faction Leader Wen, Vice Faction Leader Lu, and Hall Leader Xue. We already know the specific location and time, but we don't know where the sheepskin scroll is. Thinking back to that day in Imo Xian's palace, Miss O answered so confidently that you must know the whereabouts of the sheepskin scroll. That's why I had a private discussion with Miss O. Oh Yen smiled and looked at Zhang Xiaohua next to her. She felt an indescribable sense of security. When Zhang Xiaohua received the sheepskin scroll and the paper box, she had promised not to tell anyone. Sure enough, although Zhang Xiaohu was her biological second brother and the faction leader of the Misty School, Zhang Xiaohua still kept her promise and did not tell Zhang Xiaohu about the sheepskin scroll, faction leader Zhang. Although I didn't do the wrong thing and I know the whereabouts of the sheepskin scroll, but the sheepskin scroll is not in my hands. Ah? Then, where is it hidden in ethereal heights? Zhang Xiaohu was stunned. It's not hidden in ethereal heights. Oh Yen smiled and said, it's in someone's collection. Who? Zhang Xiaohu asked. Far away on the horizon but close in front of you. Oh Yen answered without hesitation. Who? Zhang Xiaohu looked up and saw Zhang Xiaohua standing next to him with a smile. He pointed at her in disbelief and said, him? Xiaohua? Oh Yen nodded and said, it's my faction leader senior brother. After saying that, she smiled and covered her mouth. Sigh, Xiaohua, you're really good at hiding it. Zhang Xiaohu was speechless. I'll keep my promise and keep my promise. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, that sheepskin scroll was given to O Yen by faction leader O of the Misty School. I'm keeping it for O Yen. Of course, I can't tell you. Well, you're right. Zhang Xiaohu turned his head and asked O Yen, this. Can you give me the sheepskin scroll now? Well, of course. Faction leader senior brother said it well. I'll keep my promise and keep my promise. Since I've promised to spread the incense cult, I'll keep my promise. The sheepskin scroll is in faction leader senior brother's hands. Let senior brother give it to faction leader Zhang. After saying that, O Yen let out a long breath and said, well, the matter between me and the Misty School can be considered finished. Don't, O Yen. There's still a paper box. Zhang Xiaohua said. That longevity pill. I'll leave it to faction leader senior brother. Big brother didn't say anything. I don't dare to make a decision. Faction leader senior brother, keep it for yourself. You can use it yourself or give it to others. I won't care. Easy for you to say. What is this longevity pill? I don't even know what it is. How can I use it? Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Faction leader senior brother is a cultivator of the path of immortality. If you don't even know about this longevity pill, then I don't even know. I only know that there are rumors in the Jianghu that this longevity pill can prolong one's life. As for whether it can or can't, I don't know. Ah! There's such a miraculous pill. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. Please vote monthly, please vote recommendation, please bookmark, please tip. Chapter 1197. Speaking of alchemy, Zhang Xiaohua had also refined a lot of elixirs, such as healing, blood replenishing, detoxifying, increasing one's power, and even frightening one's mind. He knew a lot of elixir recipes, but Zhang Xiaohua had never heard or seen an elixir that could increase one's life. If there was such an elixir, then it must be a real elixir. Is there a real immortal in the secret site? Zhang Xiaohua had some doubts, but then he thought that Wan Wuxin, Yang Haoya, Yu Mingxin, and the earliest Sakra all came here from the transmission array in the secret site. They also stayed in the secret site. If there was such a magical elixir, they must have taken it long ago, and there was no need to leave any projection of their primordial spirits. Of course, if the longevity pill could only prolong a person's life, it could also be explained. But then, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help laughing. It was the same as what O Peng thought at that time. No one knew the length of life. After taking it, no one knew whether your life was prolonged or not. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's hoarse laughter, Yen said, I'm sure senior brother sect leader has also thought of the strange aspects of this longevity pill, so I'll leave this matter to senior brother sect leader. Then, she got up and said to Zhang Xiaohu, Grand Master Zhang, I'll go back and pack up. Please come to Huanqi Villa tomorrow, and I'll hand over all the affairs of Huanqi Villa, account books, keys and other things to them. Zhang Xiaohu quickly got up and said anxiously, Miss O. Why? This matter needs to be discussed again. Yen said with a smile, Grand Master Zhang, I'm now a disciple of Beta School. Our Beta School has been established in Yaoshan. If I don't go to Yaoshan, why should I stay in Huanqi Villa? This. Zhang Xiaohu was at a loss for words. He looked at Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, Second brother, Yen is right. Huanqi Mountain Villa is the private property of the Misty School. It's really inappropriate for Yen to be in charge of it. Our Yaoshan Immortal Mansion also has such a villa, which is enough for our Beta School's disciples to live in. We should ask the Misty School to take back Huanqi Mountain Villa. Eldest Miss O, don't be anxious. When we return at night, I'll discuss it with Martial Ancestor Li and Martial Ancestor Lu again. How about this? After dinner, I'll go with Grand Faction Leader Zhang to explain this matter to the two elders. What do you think? Yen was determined to leave at this time. I see. Alright, I'll listen to Miss O's arrangement. Zhang Xiaohu sighed and agreed. Then, I'll go to prepare dinner first. Senior brother, please discuss with gang leader Zhang. Yen smiled and went out of the pavilion. Looking at Yen's thin back, Zhang Xiaohu sighed slightly. Why bother? Second brother, it's awkward for Yen to stay here. Second sister-in-law also has a grudge in her heart. It's better not to meet each other. Everyone will be straightforward. Zhang Xiaohua persuaded. Although that's the case, when I think that I drove Grand Faction Leader O's sister away from Huanqi Mountain Villa as soon as I took over the Misty School, I always feel uncomfortable. What's the matter? The news of the opening of Beidu School's Yaoshan Immortal Mansion will be spread to the Misty School in the next 2 days. You tell the Misty School's disciples that Yen entered Beidu School. Everyone will make a clear choice between Yaoshan Immortal Mansion and Huanqi Mountain Villa. Everyone will only be envious. Who will think of this? Alas, that's the only way. Zhang Xiaohu nodded. What do you mean, that's the only way? Yaoshan Immortal Mansion has beautiful lakes and mountains. It's 10 times, no, 100 times better than Huanqi Mountain Villa and Misty Mountain Villa. Anyone will make the same choice. Zhang Xiaohua said disdainfully. Tisk. Zhang Xiaohu knew that Zhang Xiaohua was boasting again, but he was also disdainful. Here, second brother. This sheepskin scroll is for you. Zhang Xiaohua handed the sheepskin scroll to Zhang Xiaohu. Zhang Xiaohu took it and looked at it with twilight. He said with a smile, it really is the ring finger of Five Claw Peak. But I heard from Martial Uncle Lu that Five Claw Peak's Swanjajub forest requires 4 sheepskin scrolls to be put together. Only on the 15th day of the first month can the method of entering and leaving be revealed. It's really strange. Yes, it should be. This is the method of the immortal Tao. Zhang Xiaohua nodded. That day, I saw Swanjajub forest on my way back to Guizhuang House. Fortunately, I wasn't left inside. That's why. Second brother, you can't be careless. You must have the 4 sheepskin scrolls to reveal the method of entering and leaving. You mustn't take any risks. Of course, if it wasn't so dangerous and so difficult to enter, why would Abbess Jingy let me out of the Misty School? Just for this sheepskin scroll? She didn't expect it to be in the hands of a disciple of her incense sect. Alright, Xiaohua, take it. Zhang Xiaohu said as he handed over the sheepskin scroll. For me? Why me again? Zhang Xiaohua waved her hands repeatedly as if she were a great burden. If I don't give it to you, who should I give it to? Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, this sheepskin scroll is extremely important. Perhaps during this period of time, people from the incense cult, the Righteous Alliance, or even the Water Cloud Room will come looking for this sheepskin scroll. Leaving it with me is the safest place. Only your money pouch is the safest place in this world. And Swanjajub Forest is such a dangerous place. Do you want me to go alone? But you, and Master Wen, Master Lu, and the others, they've been to Swanjajub Forest, right? Zhang Xiaohua said helplessly. Ha, of course they've been there. But, don't you want to go to Swanjajub Forest? Maybe there's something good in there. Zhang Xiaohu smiled. Incense Sect and Dalan Temple both want to enter the secret plane. You're now the head of Beta School. Don't you want to go in and see what they're up to? Moreover, if they were to harbor ill intentions towards you in the secret plane, would you have the heart to let them do so? And don't say anything else. Zhang Xiaohua grabbed the sheepskin scroll and said, I give up. 5 Claws Peak is not far from Yaoshan. You can go there when the time comes. Ha, I've said it before. Brothers fighting a tiger, father and son going to war. You won't leave them alone. Zhang Xiaohu smiled and hugged Zhang Xiaohua's shoulder. He patted her hard and said, your bald head is really pleasing to the eye. You should have shaved your head long ago. Zhang Xiaohua ignored him and asked again, by the way, what time and place is it? I'll probably stay in Yaoshan Immortal Mansion for a while. I'll go find you when the time comes. Oh, my master already told me that they made an appointment with Yanming Jusher of Yanming Villa on the 14th night of the first lunar month at 5 Claws Peak's Index Finger Peak. Abbess Jing Yi didn't make any other appointment. It should be here. Alright, the full moon is in the canopy, and we're meeting at dusk. Master Yanming is also a wonderful person. Zhang Xiaohua smiled. Unfortunately. Yanming Jusher. Zhang Xiaohu just opened his mouth when he heard Ji Xiaohua shouting in the distance, Master, second uncle, it's time to eat. Alright, I'm coming. Zhang Xiaohua had already removed the restriction when O Yen left. She turned around and said, let's go, second brother. Let's eat first. Later, you and O Yen can go and explain to Elder Lu and Elder Li, tomorrow, prepare a few carriages. I'll bring father and mother, to see my Big Dipper sect. Ha, aren't you going to invite me? Of course you're welcome. But at this time, your Misty School has a lot of things to do. Can you leave? Ha, I'll go back and discuss with Elder Li. I can steal half a day of leisure. Well, that's true. All the sects are now in Yaoshan and haven't left yet. The Righteous Alliance. It's estimated that they won't do anything to Misty School before the secret plane. Moreover, all the sects are watching Beta School. Who will pay attention to my Misty School? Besides. Well, don't say any more. Let's eat first. I don't care if you leave or not. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and dragged Zhang Xiaohu to the central room. After dinner, O Yen followed Zhang Xiaohu, Chang'e, and Chen Chen to ethereal heights. When they heard that O Yen was going to return Huanqi Villa to Misty School, Li Jian and Lu Qingyang were hesitant. However, when they heard that Beta School had already established a sect in Yaoshan Immortal Mansion and that O Yen was going to go to Yaoshan, their reaction was as Zhang Xiaohua had expected. They were extremely supportive. Then, Zhang Xiaohu sent out elite disciples to assist in the inventory and handover of Huanqi Villa overnight. The Zhang family's arrangement was even simpler. Zhang Kai and Guo Sufei also learned from their previous experience. They only packed their belongings and did not bring any other supplies. The next morning, 10 carriages were ready and waiting outside the courtyard of the Zhang family's Huanqi Villa. When he saw so many carriages, Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. However, when he scanned with his divine sense, he understood and could not help but smile bitterly. Except for the first 6 carriages, which were empty, the other 4 carriages were full of food and vegetables. It was Yen who had bought them overnight and was going to bring them to Yaoshan Immortal Mansion. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua in a daze, Yen smiled and said, "Master, Immortal Mansion has just appeared, so there must be no food in it. I took the liberty to buy some first. By the way, the boxes that you gave me last time, I also put them in one place. Come with me, master, and let's collect them together." "Well, Yen, thank you for your trouble." Zhang Xiaohua nodded. He had long stopped eating, so he really did not think of such things. He really did not know if there was any food in Immortal Mansion. After putting those things into the belt, Yen and Qiu Tong handed over all the affairs of Huanxi Villa to the Misty School, leaving only Elder Yu beside the carriage. Although it was just a simple handover, it was also very complicated. Yen and Qiu Tong came back in a hurry when the sun was high in the sky. Zhang Xiaohua, Zhang Xiaohu, Ji Xiaohua, and Shui Tian were in one carriage. Mr. Liu, Zhang Xiaolong, Lu Qian, and Zhang Bairen were in another carriage. Chang'e, Chen Chen, Nye Qianyu, and Zhang Pinger were in another carriage. Yen, Qiu Tong, and Elder Yu were in another carriage. The remaining 2 carriages were loaded with some sundries of the Zhang family, and then they were on their way. However, Little Black and Little Yellow seemed to be very afraid of Zhang Xiaohua. They even ran to Zhang Bairen's carriage and left with Zhang Bairen. Along the way, they met many disciples of small sects returning from Yaoshan. They talked about the establishment of the Big Dipper sect and the matter of Yaoshan Immortal Abode. However, they would never have thought that the Big Dipper sect, which was at the peak of its power, was in the 4 carriages beside them. Please vote monthly, recommend, bookmark, and tip. Chapter 1198. Other than the heated discussions about the Beidu school and their undisguised admiration for the sect leader of Beidu school, most of the people in the pugilistic world were whispering about the Yao Mountain mummies. The entire pugilistic world now knew that while they were fighting for the immortal abode with all their might, the Tenryus sect had laid a huge trap beneath their feet. The Tenryus sect had sucked the blood out of all the dead and injured. This kind of strange thing, everyone had only seen it in ghost stories. They had never encountered it in real life. Now that they really encountered it, everyone felt a chill down their spines and goosebumps appeared on their skin as they thought about it. However, humans were always curious. Who could resist it? Whenever they had free time, they would look around and discuss in hushed voices. As for whether the Tenryus sect was behind it or whether they had any evidence, who would care? In any case, the Tenryus sect was already mysterious to begin with. Now, they had been given a strange outer coat. Zhang Xiaohua hid in the carriage and listened to the discussions by the roadside. Her lips curled into a smile. That day, she had exposed the Tenryus sect on Yao Mountain with the intention of causing the Tenryus sect to be in a terrible fix. The more chaotic the Tenryus sect was, the more chances she would have to bring Meng Meng out of the Tenryus sect openly. She would not be in such a difficult situation now. The carriage moved very slowly and only arrived near Yao Mountain on the 4th day. Along the way, although they met many people from the pugilistic world, they had just gone through a near-death experience and were mentally exhausted. Moreover, many disciples from different sects were traveling together. Zhang Xiaohua's group of 10 unescorted carriages was, of course, a little eye-catching, but they did not encounter any trouble. On the 3rd day, the carriage bumped into the Yuli Alliance, which was heading towards Pingyang City. Zhang Xiaohua did not want to expose her whereabouts and only brought Nye Qianyu to meet Valley Head Nye. She instructed him to go to the Misty School first and wait for Zhang Xiaohu to return from Yao Mountain before meeting him. After a few days of recuperation, Valley Head Nye's injuries were much better. Nye Qianyu was happy to see that her father was fine. She gave him the meridian soothing elixir that she had obtained from Zhang Xiaohua. Valley Head Nye was pleasantly surprised and bowed to Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua avoided the bow, saying that she was the one who gave it to Nye Qianyu and did not dare to accept it. Valley Master Nye understood what Zhang Xiaohua meant. Although he felt regretful, he also felt gratified. Every family's parents would always think for their children first. Nie Qianyu would enter Beta school and live in Yao Mountain immortal abode in the future. This kind of immortal fate was envied by tens of thousands of people in the pugilistic world. If he did not have such an opportunity in the future, then it was nothing. Nie Qianyu was a little reluctant to part with her father. Everything from the past flashed before her eyes. In the past, no matter how far she had traveled or how much danger she had taken, her roots were always in Rejuvenation Valley and she was always with her father. What about the future? She was a disciple of Beta School. Not to mention whether it was convenient to enter and leave Yao Mountain immortal abode, just the distance between Yao Mountain and Rejuvenation Valley was more than a dozen days' journey. Zhang Xiaohua understood Nie Qianyu's thoughts. Seeing her return to the carriage unhappily, she could only sigh slightly. Valley Head Nie was not Mr. Liu, nor was he Elder Yu or Qiu Tong. Rejuvenation Valley was a sect in the pugilistic world. Before Beta School had a firm foothold, he could not casually agree to anything. From afar, everyone lifted the carriage curtains from time to time to look at Yao Mountain, which was getting closer and closer. They wanted to see Yao Mountain immortal abode's appearance. However, although it was a warm winter day and the sky was clear, Yao Mountain immortal abode was shrouded in a faint white fog. Only the faint outline of Yao Mountain immortal abode could be seen clearly. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "This is one of the concealment methods of immortal abode." Previously, when it was born, it was a sign that no one was controlling it. Those strange phenomena all consume vital energy. Now that the vital energy of heaven and earth is not sufficient, this immortal mansion also has to live a tight life. Ha ha ha. Nie Qianyu laughed when she got off the carriage. This. Xiaohua, Yao Mountain is still far away. Why did you get off the carriage here? Mother isn't tired. Let's go up the mountain as soon as possible. Guo Sufei looked at the towering Yao Mountain and frowned. It's okay, mother. You don't have to climb the mountain. Xiaohua is strong. Just let him carry you. Zhang Xiaohu said with a smile. Hee, mother, let's go home. How can we climb the mountain? If you really climb the mountain, you won't even be able to touch the door of immortal abode. As Zhang Xiaohua spoke, he took out a cross-shaped Dharma artifact from his money pouch and threw it to the ground. He infused it with a Dharma seal and the Dharma artifact disappeared. Not long after, a milky white halo about 10 feet wide appeared where the Dharma artifact was. This is. Zhang Kai said curiously, this circle of light is, do we enter through the circle of light? Zhang Xiaohu had seen immortal abode's methods and understood a little. Mother, father, wait a moment. This is the first time I've used this method to enter immortal abode. Let me try it first. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and stepped into the circle of light. She cast a spell and with a flash of light, her figure disappeared. After a moment, another flash of light appeared and Zhang Xiaohua's figure reappeared. She said with a smile, Mother, Father, and Mr. Liu, come here first. I'll bring you in. Why is it so troublesome? Zhang Xiaolong said, if you're not here, won't we be unable to enter immortal abode? Hee, isn't your family's Byron able to swallow the mansion guarding spiritual steel? With the mansion guarding spiritual steel, there's a staircase on Yao Mountain that leads directly to the gate of immortal abode. But look, there are many martial artists around Yao Mountain. If they see, I'm afraid it's not appropriate. And, then you'd better let Byron learn this circle of light. Otherwise, it'll be very troublesome. Zhang Xiaolong blinked and said. Don't worry, big brother. When I'm familiar with immortal abode, I'll make some jade talismans for you to enter and exit. We don't need these complicated things, okay? While the two of them were talking, Zhang Kai, Guo Sufei, and Mr. Liu entered the circle of light. Zhang Xiaohua looked and said, Big brother, sister-in-law, and Byron, come in too. When the three of them stepped into the circle of light, Zhang Xiaohua cast a spell and the 7 figures disappeared. Guo Sufei stood in the circle of light and held Zhang Kai's hand. She felt her body sink and her vision swayed. Before she could close her eyes, the scene in front of her changed greatly. Ah! Was this really Yao Mountain? How can there be such a big lake? Guo Sufei exclaimed. Mr. Liu had been to Yao Mountain before. He didn't remember there being a lake on Yao Mountain. He could only look at Zhang Xiaohua with a face full of surprise. Mother, there's no lake on Mount Yao. This is Immortal's abode, and the lake in Immortal's abode is where we'll live in the future. You stay here for a while, I'll bring second brother and the others in. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and disappeared again. Although Zhang Xiaohua had obtained the mansion-guarding spirit steel, he could only refine one layer. He still couldn't control most of the places in Immortal abode. After thinking for a long time, he decided that the only place next to the lake was the servant's residence with a lake and trees. It was similar to Guizhuang House. That was why he directly sent his parents here. Not long after, the pitiful Zhang Xiaohua, reduced to a porter, brought the rest of the people and 10 carriages to the shore. Everyone was shocked by the scene in front of them. No one expected Yao Mountain to have such a beautiful lake and mountain scenery. Senior brother sect leader, is this our immortal abode? This is really too big, isn't it? In the future, are we going to live here? Although O Yen had seen the world, she could only stammer as she asked. This is nothing. Zhang Xiaohua chuckled. I won't hide it from you. This is just the servants' living quarters. The space it occupies is less than half of the entire immortal abode. Ah! Everyone was shocked. Zhang Xiaohu said incredulously, Xiaohua, you're bragging again. How is that possible? Zhang Xiaohua took out the mansion-guarding spiritual steel and pointed at the golden part. I can only refine 10% of this mansion-guarding spiritual steel. Therefore, we can only live in the lowest level place for now. This lowest level place is already so big. Isn't the entire immortal abode even bigger? As if this wasn't convincing enough, she patted the mansion-guarding spiritual steel. Everyone's eyes flashed and they arrived at another cliff. Look, there are 9 pavilions here. We're living in the white one. As for the other 8, we can't go to them yet. Moreover, this is only a part of the immortal abode. As for the other places, I don't know, sect leader Ren, this pavilion doesn't seem right. We were at the lakeside just now. Elder Yu said curiously. Elder Yu, why don't you try stepping on that praying mat? Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. Elder Yu hesitated for a moment before stepping on it. The praying mat flew toward the white pavilion. Father, mother, Mr. Liu, let's use this too. It's quite fun. Zhang Xiaohua saw the envy in Shui Tiantian's eyes. She waved her hand and said, Disciples, go. Yes, Master. Shui Tiantian and Ji Xiaohua said in unison and ran over. Each of them took a praying mat and flew over. Zhang Xiaohu was also tempted. Seeing that his parents were hesitating, he couldn't help but urge, Father, Mother, there's Xiaohua. There won't be any danger. Just treat it as fun. Zhang Kai laughed. Only then did he step on the praying mat and look down at the sky. He felt a little dizzy. Zhang Xiaohua hurried over and supported him with one hand. She smiled and said, Father, I'll go with you. As they spoke, the two of them each took a praying mat and floated in the air, flying towards the pavilion. With Zhang Xiaohua supporting him, Zhang Kai mustered up his courage. After flying for a while, he opened his eyes and looked around. He listened to the sound of the wind and laughed, Son, Father also became an immortal for a while today. Everyone behind him was relieved when they heard Zhang Kai's laughter. Guo Sufei, Mr. Liu, and the rest also got onto the praying mats with the help of Zhang Xiaolong and Lu Qian. When everyone entered the main hall, Zhang Xiaohua and the rest were already waiting inside. Chapter 1199. How is it? Is it fun? Zhang Xiaohua smiled. It's fun, it's fun. Shui Tiantian said first. Seeing Shui Tiantian's happy expression, as if he had escaped from the sorrow of losing his father, Zhang Xiaohua was also happy and said, "Do you still want to play?" Shui Tiantian hesitated for a moment and said honestly, "Disciple wants to, but there's still a long time, let's play slowly in the future. Don't get tired of playing, otherwise, there won't be any more fun in the future." Elder Yu pointed at the door and said, "Sect Master Ren, the lake, is behind us?" "Yes, Elder Yu, please." When everyone walked out of the palace, sure enough, there was a pool of clear water rippling with the wind and lush green trees. Although it was a plain scene, it had the aura of an immortal. What a good place to go. Mr. Lu praised, to be able to spend one's entire life here, it's not a waste of one's life. Xiaohua, this lake, how do we get there? Zhang Kai was very sensitive and noticed. "Oh, isn't that right, father? If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten. This small boat requires the use of true qi, otherwise, it would require the use of oars. Wait a moment, I'll go out and find an ordinary boat and oars." Senior brother sect master, are the things in the main hall, used for cultivation? Zhang Pinger asked again. He, you guys are really impatient. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the curious faces of her disciples and turned to Zhang Kai and said, "Father, let's go back first. This immortal residence will be ours in the future, we have plenty of time to enjoy it." As she spoke, she waved her big sleeves, and the scene in front of everyone changed. They were actually at the shore of the lake again. TSK, Zhang Xiaohu praised, "Xiaohua, you really have the cultivation of an immortal." "Not at all, second brother, this is all because I used the immortal residence's spiritual steel and used the immortal residence's power. How can I have this kind of magical power?" Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and said. Then, she looked at the pond not far away and the pavilion beside the pond and said, "The pavilions over there are all empty, everyone can choose one, there's no one living in them." "Is there, mine too?" Zhang Xiaohu asked shamelessly. There is, but there is only one. Don't fight with my disciple for a place." Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. Chang'e and Chen Chen had been shocked and curious all the time, so they didn't say anything. Hearing this, they blushed again. "That's enough. Let father, mother, big brother, and big sister-in-law pick first, then your disciple. I'll pick last." Zhang Xiaohu curled his lips. Zhang Kai and Guo Sufei looked at the extraordinarily exquisite small building and said happily, "This? Do we still need to choose? Which one, is something we can't even dream of." After the elders had chosen at random, Nye Qianyu and the others found a small building that they liked. Of course, Ji Xiaohua and Shui Tiantian lived in the same building. Qiu Tong didn't have to choose and lived with O Yen. In the end, there were still a lot of small buildings left. Zhang Xiaohu didn't stand on ceremony and chose one for himself. Chang'e and Chen Chen also chose one next to Zhang Xiaohu. "Well, big brother, second brother, second brother, second brother, second brother, you put the things in the carriage with father and mother. I'll take the food and other things later. I'll take my disciples to the front, what about Byron?" Lu Qian smiled. "Of course he will go. He is the chief disciple of Beta School." Zhang Xiaohua took Zhang Byron with a smile. Zhang Byron looked around with his eyes wide open, as if he was also very curious and liked it very much. "Let's go." Zhang Xiaohua waved her big sleeve and they all disappeared. When they appeared again, they were in the main hall of the Lingxiao Palace. This place is. Although everyone had used the praying mat just now and had flown through the air, but even Nun Jingyi and Master Changsheng were dazed by the scene. How could they control themselves? After a long while, O Yen heaved a sigh of relief and said in a low voice, "Senior Martial Brother Sect Leader. Are we in the sky? If he accidentally falls down, will he die?" Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Why don't you take a step forward and see?" Oh Yen stood carefully on the white cloud and didn't dare to move. After hearing Zhang Xiaohua's words, she suppressed the violent beating of her heart and took a small step forward. Oh Yen only felt that her body was floating, like a fallen leaf in the wind. She slid forward slightly and there were still faint white clouds under her feet. Oh Yen had only taken one step, but Shui Tian had already run several steps ahead of her. Suddenly, everyone was overjoyed. They floated around the main hall, but, no matter how they floated, they couldn't cross the boundary of the red clouds. How about Byron? Zhang Xiaohua had an idea and put Zhang Byron in the air. Immediately, a white cloud formed under Byron's body. Zhang Xiaohua pointed to the throne in the center and smiled, "Go, Byron, go there." When Byron heard this, he staggered and slowly flew towards the center. Unfortunately, out of Zhang Xiaohua's expectations, when Zhang Byron reached the border of the red clouds, he was also blocked. Zhang Byron patted the invisible barrier in front of him and opened his small mouth, about to cry. Byron, don't cry. Master will take you there. Zhang Xiaohua carried Zhang Byron and appeared on the central throne in a flash. Zhang Byron saw this and laughed loudly. He struggled out of Zhang Xiaohua's arms and slowly walked around the central throne, playing. Cough, cough. All right, disciples. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the 5 disciples in the main hall and coughed. Yes, master. Ji Xiaohua and Shui Tian stopped and bowed to salute. Yes, senior brother. Nye Qianyu, Zhang Pinger, and O Yen also stopped and bowed. Yes, yesterday, I announced the opening of Beta School in front of everyone in the martial arts world. But you are all in Huanxi Mountain Villa, so you couldn't see yesterday's grand occasion. Now, my Beta School, 6 disciples are gathered in this Lingshao Palace. It was the biggest occasion since the opening of my Beta School. Master, there is still a junior brother. How old is he? When will he come? Shui Tian asked. And, that junior brother of yours, is called Chu Jing. He's not much older than Bai Ren. He's also a dying child. He should be on his way now. Perhaps he'll arrive in 10 days or so. At that time, our Big Dipper sect will really be complete. Congratulations, senior brother. Congratulations, senior brother. Our Beta School has finally opened in Yaoshan. Nye Qianyu and the other 2 junior sisters said in unison. Yes, everything is difficult at the beginning. My Beta School opened yesterday because we have a very high starting point. You are also standing at a higher place than others. However, these are all external factors. If you want to step on the path of immortality, you need to work hard and study hard to achieve great success. Yes, we will follow Master's instructions. Everyone bowed to salute. Yes, there is no need to be so restrained. Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile, look at your senior brother, he is still playing at my feet. When Zhang Byron heard himself mentioned, he raised his head and tilted his head to the side with a smile. Everyone laughed. That day, when I called myself the Beta School, it was just a casual remark. I didn't really want to open this school. However, since I got such an immortal opportunity and took the Yaoshan immortal abode, if I don't do something, I am afraid I will be punished by the heavens. Therefore, even though all of you have different aptitudes and different experiences, but I have accepted all of you as my disciples. As for me, I am also an unorthodox cultivator. Therefore, in the future, I will at most play a little role in guiding you. Everything will depend on yourselves. Then he pointed at Nye Qianyu and the others and said, although Nye Qianyu and O Yen are both women and can't practice martial arts, their aptitudes are also different. Nye Qianyu's Carefree Heart Sutra has already made a little progress. If she meets the right conditions, she will be able to set foot on the path of immortality. Perhaps she will be good at formations. Oh Yen, you are already old and haven't been able to practice the Heart Sutra. I don't know what your future is. Oh Yen smiled and said, To be able to live in this immortal abode and accompany my senior sisters and martial nephews is already the greatest fortune of my life. Whether I have any achievements in cultivation or not, I am happy. Great kindness. Zhang Xiaohua clapped her hands and said, if you always have this kind of attitude, I am afraid you can also achieve something. Then, she pointed to Zhang Pinger and said, Zhang Pinger, your martial arts are excellent. You can only walk the path of cultivation through martial arts. Although you have a starting point, your future achievements will be limited. Oh, this is just my guess. Everyone has different experiences. Didn't you see your second martial uncle? Although he also entered the path of cultivation through martial arts, I am afraid his future achievements will be higher than Abbess Jing Yi of the Cult of Fragrance. Hearing this, Zhang Pinger was happy. She bowed and said, I was abandoned by the Cult of Fragrance. I am lucky to have a place to settle down. Fortunately, senior brother sect leader accepted me into the Beta school and gave me such a bright future. How can I not work hard? Even if I don't have any great cultivation, I am deeply grateful. You don't have to be grateful. Everything has a cause and effect. Your achievements may not be bad. Then, she looked at Zhang Bairen under her feet and said with a smile, this boy. I won't say anything. Since he could swallow the life-guarding spiritual tablet of the Yaoshan immortal abode, his achievements will not be bad. It's just that he is still young. You just need to take care of him. Yes, senior brother sect leader. We understand. The three of them bowed and said. You, Xiaohua Ji, among the younger disciples, you are the one with the worst aptitude. Zhang Xiaohua pointed at Ji Xiaohua and said. Yes, I understand. I am already satisfied to be able to become your disciple and learn a few fist techniques. I have never thought about the immortal arts. Ji Xiaohua answered honestly. Heaven gave you some luck. You don't need to get up and come to my door. Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile, if you don't have such a fate, how can you have karma with me? I have also benefited a lot from you. How can I not return it to you? Moreover, you have a simple personality. You have a good foundation for cultivation. Your achievements may not be bad in the future. Thank you, Master. Ji Xiaohua bowed and said. Well, Shui Tian, you are the one with the best aptitude among all the disciples. You have been practicing the Fist of the North Star since you were young. It can be said that you have an inseparable connection with my Beta school when you entered the school. Although, you used to be in the Misty school, but there is karma in the unseen world. Your fate will come in the end. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to cast a recommendation vote or monthly vote. Chapter 1200. Thank you for your guidance, Master. If you hadn't accepted me as your disciple, I'm afraid I would have been stranded in Jianghu. Shui Tian was also very serious and respectful at this time. Yes, although your starting point is very high, but there's also one thing that's not good. There's martial arts internal energy in your meridians, and your cultivation of the Big Dipper magical fist is also wrong. It's not easy to slowly correct it now, I know. I will use great perseverance to overcome these difficulties. If Master can destroy my martial arts cultivation, I'm willing to cultivate again. Shui Tian gritted his teeth and said. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she couldn't help but be moved. She clapped her hands and said, you have such great perseverance, you can cultivate successfully. It's just that this method is not reliable. The martial arts meridians and the immortal meridians are the same. Even the Dantian has many cultivation methods that are the same. If I destroy your internal energy, won't you be unable to cultivate the immortal path? Shui Tiantian's face turned red. He lowered his head and said, I'm ignorant, but I'll listen to Master's instructions. It's fine. With such great perseverance, what can't you achieve in this world? My Beta school's Worry-Free Heart Sutra cultivates the middle Dantian. It's different from the lower Dantian that you cultivate in martial arts. The two may not conflict. You can cultivate as much as you want. Shui Tiantian's face was filled with joy. He bowed and said, "Thank you, Master." Senior brother sect leader, can I do the same? Zhang Ping'er asked impatiently. Of course, Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. However, if you cultivate again from the beginning, it's not as convenient as cultivating through martial arts. Yes, I understand. Zhang Ping'er gritted her teeth and said, I'm willing to cultivate again. Haha, it's all up to you. I've also just started cultivating, so I don't know what's best. Zhang Xiaohua said, however, since you've all chosen, don't regret it. No one knows what the future will be like. As long as you put in the effort, you'll definitely reap the rewards. We understand. All the disciples bowed. In the end, Zhang Xiaohua looked at Little Black and Xiaohua, who were sitting obediently on Ji Xiaohua's shoulder and looking at everything in the hall curiously. They glanced at her from time to time and seemed to be a little reluctant and a little scared. She said, these two little things. I learned from the incense cult. I don't even know their background. I only know that their mothers are called Yellow Wind and Black Lightning. Ah. When Zhang Ping'er heard this, she covered her mouth in shock. These two vicious beasts were known to the disciples of the incense cult. The two of them can be Beta School's guardian beasts. Zhang Xiaohua said. She was also talking to Little Black and Little Yellow in her mind. How could these two little things know? He looked at Zhang Xiaohua with a puzzled expression. Alright, actually. I got most of my cultivation from the Carefree Heart Sutra. This Carefree Heart Sutra is one of the cultivation methods you all can cultivate. As for the cultivation method Jade Slips in the White Pavilion's hall, as well as the immortal tools and other items, you all can cultivate them. Of course, didn't I just say that the cultivation methods in the White Pavilions are the most basic? With my cultivation, I can only break the restrictions in these pavilions and obtain these cultivation methods. If your cultivation in the Immortal Tao reaches a higher level in the future, you can break the restrictions in the red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and purple pavilions. Then, all of you can cultivate the higher level cultivation methods inside. Hee, think about it. I only have the cultivation method in the White Pavilion. If you all can successfully cultivate the cultivation method in the Purple Pavilion and reach the purple cloud in the center of the throne, then, in this world, who will be a match for you? Her words filled everyone's eyes with hope. They all clenched their fists and looked like they were going to work hard. Right, I forgot that the cultivation of the Way of Immortality relies on the Yuan Qi of Heaven and Earth. The Yuan Qi of Heaven and Earth in the Immortal Mansion is abundant. However, I need to make a spirit gathering array for you all to help your cultivation. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and patted her forehead. A spirit gathering array? What's that? Nie Qianyu asked curiously. All of you, follow me. Zhang Xiaohua stood up and picked up Zhang Bairen. With a flick of her sleeve, the scene in front of everyone changed again. Although they were still floating in the air, it was pitch black above them. There was almost no light. Don't worry, watch me. Zhang Xiaohua said. She put Zhang Bairen down and took out the mansion-guarding spiritual steel. It emitted a hazy light, illuminating the surroundings. This was the place where the phoenix was suppressed in the immortal mansion. Zhang Xiaohua put away the 9 immortal treasures and the mansion-guarding spiritual steel. The wasteland formed by the Yuan Qi of Heaven and Earth was also destroyed. There was only some gradually increasing and chaotic Yuan Qi of Heaven and Earth left. After taking out the mansion-guarding spiritual steel, Zhang Xiaohua patted the belt around her waist. Countless 5-colored chalcedony flew out from the belt. Zhang Xiaohua closed her eyes and thought for a while. Then, she placed her left hand on the mansion-guarding spiritual steel. She formed another seal and hit the chalcedony one by one. As Zhang Xiaohua inserted the seals, the chalcedony gradually emitted a brilliant light. Go, after the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, Zhang Xiaohua pointed his finger, and all the blue water chalcedony flew into the air. They were like stars in the night sky, arranged in a mysterious pattern. Then, Zhang Xiaohua did the same thing. She sent the other 4 types of chalcedony into the air. But the more she sent, the longer it took. When the last greenwood type chalcedony was in the air, Zhang Xiaohua's face was already pale. Zhang Xiaohua took out a primordial stone and replenished the primordial energy in his meridians. Then, he conjured a spell and spat a mouthful of blood onto the mansion-guarding spiritual steel. The spiritual steel exploded with a bang, an array of rainbow light flew out and charged towards the 5-element spirit-gathering formation that was already set up in midair. Go! Just as the 7-colored light hit the formation, Zhang Xiaohua pointed her finger and shouted. The 7-colored light immediately exploded like brilliant fireworks, scattering on the 5-colored chalcedony of the 5 elements gathering formation. Hiss! A series of light sounds, as if a fuse had been ignited, the entire 5 elements gathering formation lit up. The chaotic yuan qi in the air was gradually attracted by the formation and projected towards it. Above Yao Mountain, the yuan qi of heaven and earth was also attracted by the immortal abode and guided into the formation. All right, it's done. Zhang Xiaohua sighed. Looking at the depleted yuan qi in her meridians, she couldn't help but smile bitterly. She relied on her late-stage qi refinement cultivation and the help of the mansion-guarding spiritual steel to barely complete the 5 elements gathering formation. This, the inheritance of a sect, was really difficult. However, for the time being, Zhang Xiaohua's painstaking efforts were unknown. The 5 disciples looked at Zhang Xiaohua, not knowing what he was doing. When Zhang Xiaohua said it was done with a pale face, everyone was also at a loss. Looking at the chalcedony that was as bright as the stars, Nie Qianyu whispered, "Senior brother sect leader, are you creating stars?" Zhang Xiaohua almost fell down. Patting her forehead, she said, "This is the 5 elements gathering formation that I mentioned earlier. In the future, if you want to practice immortal arts, you can practice in this formation. It'll be twice the result with half the effort." "Is that so, then? Thank you, senior brother sect leader." Nie Qianyu looked at the people beside her and bowed. Forget it, forget it. When you know the importance of this formation in the future, it won't be too late to thank me." Zhang Xiaohua helplessly waved her hand. Zhang Bairen was the one who knew what was good for him. While everyone was talking, he had already run into the 5 elements gathering formation and very comfortably lay down to sleep. "Little black, little yellow, you two go too." Zhang Xiaohua looked at the 2 little things standing on Ji Xiaohua's shoulder. They were still a little afraid of her and thought to herself. The 2 little things were stunned, then immediately became happy. They flew over and rolled around in the vitality to play. After a while, Zhang Xiaohua recovered her true qi. She waved her hand and said, "Let's go. I've set up a restriction here. In the future, I'll give you a jade talisman to pass through. When it's time to practice, just come here." As she spoke, she held Bairen in her arms. The 2 little things were also afraid. They flew in front of Zhang Xiaohua, but they didn't dare to fly on Zhang Xiaohua's shoulder anymore. Zhang Xiaohua didn't understand why they had such a change. However, they still called her father and mother in their hearts. It was just that they were a little timid. As for Zhang Xiaohua, she didn't know how to ask and could only leave it at that. Returning to the side of the pond, the fine and soft things in the carriage had already been packed. Only the heavy things were waiting for Zhang Xiaohua to start. Zhang Xiaohua didn't delay. She hurried the carriage to the place that Guo Sufei had already chosen and unloaded them one by one. The small building in the immortal mansion didn't have a stove. Guo Sufei and Lu Qian walked around for a long time but still couldn't find it. In the end, they could only ask Zhang Xiaohua if she could build one herself. Zhang Xiaohua naturally didn't have any objections. However, she couldn't use the mansion-guarding spiritual steel to create one out of thin air. She could only rely on Zhang Kai and Zhang Xiaolong to build it up bit by bit. Then, Zhang Kai pulled Zhang Xiaohua to the side and whispered, "Xiaohua, here, can we open up the wasteland for farming?" Zhang Xiaohua stared blankly and laughed. What's the matter? Father, why did you suddenly think of opening up the wasteland for farming? Hee, father has been farming all my life. I'm not used to being idle all of a sudden. Previously, when we lived in the Huanxi manor, we only ate and drank. We wandered around leisurely and didn't do any farm work at all. I'm really not used to it. Moreover, I've already looked at the back of the building just now. It's all extremely fertile land. If we plant crops, we'll definitely have a bumper harvest. At that time, our immortal mansion definitely won't be lacking in food and drink. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she smiled and said, Sure, Daddy. The land here is ours. You can do whatever you want. Oh right, even if you want to raise some chickens and ducks, or feed some pigs and sheep, that's fine too. Just tell me. That's great. Xiaohua, get 2 cattle first. I'll open up the land first. When spring comes. Zhang Kai said and looked at the sky habitually. Suddenly, he was stunned. Here, why is there no sun here? How can we plant crops? Of course, Zhang Xiaohua was delighted when she heard this. There were restrictions in Immortal Mansion. All kinds of wind, thunder, rain, and snow couldn't fall. Moreover, it was daytime every moment, there was no night at all. Ha ha ha, Zhang Xiaohua laughed and said, Father, this place is almost like an immortal realm. It's like spring all year round. Please cast a monthly vote, please cast a recommendation vote, please collect it, please tip it. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to cast a recommendation vote or monthly vote. Chapter 1201. Like spring all year round? Zhang Kai was stunned. He was a native of Lu Town, and his footprints were all within 200 miles of Lu Town. How would he know that Rejuvenation Valley was like spring all year round? Zhang Kai waved his hand and said, How can it be like spring all year round? There is no way to grow crops. It is only right to have 4 distinct seasons. Zhang Xiaohua did not know whether to laugh or cry. She nodded and said, Yes, I will listen to you. Wait a moment. Let me see if this mansion guarding spiritual steel can change the restriction here. Then, Zhang Xiaohua took out the mansion guarding spiritual steel, put her hand on it, and closed her eyes. After a while, her face lit up and she opened her eyes and said, Father, it really works. It is only here. The qi of heaven and earth in other places is very abundant. If the restriction is opened, I am afraid it will be bad for the holy mansion. As she spoke, she flew up into the air. She made a gesture and threw the mansion guarding spiritual steel into the air. Then, she pointed with her finger. Several rays of light flashed out from the steel and hit the restriction in the air. Then, there was a sizzling sound, like boiling water being poured on snow. The milky white color above the holy mansion was gradually torn apart, revealing the blue sky, as well as the white clouds and the noon sun. Zhang Xiaohua put away the mansion guarding spiritual steel and landed from the air. She smiled and said, Is this enough? Zhang Kai looked at the sky as usual and nodded. Yes, it is like this. This looks like living on the top of the mountain. That's good. Zhang Xiaohua snickered inwardly. He would not open all the seals on the immortal abode. If he did, all the heaven-earth yuan qi in the immortal abode would escape. All he needed to do was make some slight changes to the seal above the white pavilion, turning it transparent. Then, wouldn't the space above the lake become Zhang Kai's? As for the growth of the crops, Zhang Xiaohua didn't care. The immortal abode was full of heaven and earth yuan qi, so what crops wouldn't grow? Following Zhang Kai to the pond, Mr. Liu, Elder Yu, and Zhang Xiaolong had already set up a simple stove and were brewing tea. Seeing Zhang Kai coming over, Mr. Liu said happily, In-law, quickly come and try it. The lake water here can also be used to brew tea, and it's not much different from the spring water in the Guizhuang house. Is that so? Zhang Kai quickly walked over, picked up the teacup, and took a sip. Sure enough, it was as sweet as syrup. He couldn't help but smile, indeed. Then he looked at the huge lake and said, "In-law, there's so much water. I'm afraid we won't be able to drink it all in our lifetime." Hee, not bad. Father, you won't have to worry about not having tea to drink in the future. Lu Qian said with a smile. Zhang Xiaohua also tasted a cup. Sure enough, the lake water was also full of heaven and earth yuan qi. Although it was a little less than the spring water in the Guizhuang house, there wasn't much of a difference in drinking it in the mouth. Everyone sat down and chatted, while Xiaohua Ji and the rest played with Zhang Bairen at the side. After chatting for a while, Guo Sufei thought of something. Looking at Zhang Xiaohua, she hesitated for a moment before saying, "Xiaohua, mother, has something to discuss with you." Zhang Xiaohua was stunned for a moment, then she smiled and said, "Mother, this will be our home in the future. If there's anything, please speak your mind." Guo Sufei smiled and said, "This place is very beautiful. It's 10,000 times better than the Guizhuang house. What is there for mother to be dissatisfied with?" "It's just that." Zhang Xiaohua saw that her mother was a little hesitant, so she said, "Mother, just say it, it's just that, in the Guizhuang house, your grandmother's grave, and Xiaohua Ji's mother's grave are all behind the original small courtyard. What mother means is that the scenery here is very good. The feng shui must be excellent. If we are lively here, don't let your grandmother and the others miss us in the Guizhuang house. But, this is the immortal's mansion. Mother is afraid." "Hee, mother, don't worry. Actually, I've already made up my mind. Once we've settled down, I'll move grandmother's coffins and Ji Xiaohua's mother's coffins here with my eldest brother and second brother. Since you've mentioned it today, I'll go with my eldest brother and second brother. Since we still need to buy cattle, let's do it together. Xiaohua, mother is just thinking about it. If there is anything inappropriate, just forget it." Guo Sufei dissuaded. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and replied, "There's nothing inappropriate about it. The forest behind this building is very quiet, and it's not far from us. If you don't allow it, we'll bury grandma and auntie's coffins there. Mother and father go and have a look first. I will go with big brother and second brother. We will be back tomorrow." Guo Sufei quickly said, "Don't be so anxious. Mother just mentioned it first. How can I be anxious? We have all lived in Huanqi Mountain Villa for a long time. Grandmother must have been lonely for a long time. The sooner they are sent here, the sooner they will be happy." Zhang Xiaohua stood up and said, "Let's go, big brother and second brother. Let's go and pick up grandmother." "I will go too." Zhang Kai stood up and said, "There are rules when coffins are moved out." "How do you know this?" "Oh, that's fine." Zhang Xiaohua nodded and asked Zhang Xiaolong and Zhang Xiaohu to prepare 2 carriages. Then, Zhang Xiaohua and the other 3 said goodbye to everyone and took the 2 carriages down Ya Mountain. They didn't come back until noon of the 3rd day. In the 2 carriages were the coffins of grandmother and Xiaohua's mother. Zhang Xiaohua had already cast a spell on the coffins. There were also a few sturdy-looking cattle accompanying them. In these 2 days, Guo Sufei had already found the place to bury the coffins. Zhang Xiaohua and the others also came back with daily hoes and other tools. It didn't take long for the graves to be ready. Everyone followed the rules, burned incense, and kowtowed. They buried the 2 coffins again and cultivated the soil. Then, Zhang Kai was focused on organizing the land and preparing to cultivate. This time, when he went down the mountain to buy cattle, he also bought a lot of seeds. He wanted to do a big job. Zhang Xiaohu had left the Misty School for several days. It was time to go back. Zhang Xiaohua sent Zhang Xiaohu, Chang'e, and Chen Chen down the mountain. Zhang Xiaohu still held Zhang Xiaohua and said, "It's exactly 1 month before the 14th day of the first lunar month. You don't forget it." Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, "I won't." Yao Mountain is very close to Wuzhua Peak. When the time comes, you come here first and I will go with you. Then, she took out a jade talisman from her arms and said, take this jade talisman. When you get here, just inject your true qi. Well, okay. Zhang Xiaohu took it and put it in his arms. Then, he said, by the way, if young Master Li, Chu Jing, and the others come back, what should I do? Just send Chu Jing here. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, I have 2 sisters-in-law. Can't you let young Master Li meet Sister Qiu Tong? Send someone to follow young Master Li to bury Miss May's coffin and send them here. If you can't come, give this jade talisman to young Master Li. Oh, no, Chu Zhigao has the jade talisman I gave him. Ask him to come to Yao Mountain and crush the jade talisman. I will know. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua had arranged it well, Zhang Xiaohu didn't say anything. He turned over and unloaded the horse from the carriage. The 3 of them said goodbye to Zhang Xiaohua and went straight back to the Misty School. Sure enough, half a month later, Li Jinfeng and the others came back. After reporting to their families that they were safe and buried Miss May's coffin, they went to Yao Mountain Immortal Mansion. Seeing such a beautiful and fairy-like scene, they were stunned for a long time before they came to their senses. At this time, by the lakeside, Zhang Kai and Zhang Xiaolong had already tidied up a few plots of land. Some different seeds had already been sown, and the stove for cooking was also prepared. However, due to the large number of people, it was very troublesome to prepare the food. Seeing Li Jinfeng's weary face and hearing Li Jinfeng's story, Qiu Tong, who was very interested in Li Jinfeng, felt her face burning. She hid beside Oh Yen and didn't talk to Li Jinfeng directly. Li Jinfeng didn't know that Qiu Tong's attitude towards him had changed. First, he sighed. After listening to Zhang Xiaohua's explanation, he was overjoyed. However, when he saw Qiu Tong, he became silent again. He wasn't as calm and composed as he was in front of Mei Qinglian. Zhang Xiaohua was secretly observing from the side. She saw that the 2 of them wanted to say something, but they were shy and did not say anything. They were also thinking about each other. They often glanced at each other and then pretended not to notice. Then, they would glance at each other and then look away. It was like the feelings of a teenage couple. Zhang Xiaohua found it very funny, but when he thought of the sweet and distant relationship between her and him, Zhang Xiaohua missed the dream of being together with him in dire straits. I wonder, how is the discussion between the 3 immortal Dao sects, the Alliance of Righteous Dao, and the other sects of the pugilistic world? Will they attack the Tenryu sect? Zhang Xiaohua was very curious. The 3 immortal Dao sects and the Alliance of Righteous Dao were not as relaxed as Zhang Xiaohua. They were going to attack the Tenryu sect on a whim. They had lost many people in the fight for the Yaoshan immortal abode. Even the seniors of the immortal Dao sects were seriously injured. The 3 immortal Dao sects, the Alliance of Righteous Dao, and a few other large sects had discussed for 2 days at the foot of Yaoshan Mountain. They all felt that although the Heavenly King of the Tenryu sect had been seriously injured, the disciples below the Heavenly King level had not suffered any casualties. On the other hand, the various sects at the foot of Yaoshan Mountain had lost many high-ranking disciples and ordinary disciples. The strength of the various sects had decreased greatly. If they were to fight against the disciples of the Tenryu sect, they would not have much chance of winning. The most important thing was that although everyone suspected that the Tenryu sect had set up a trap, there was no evidence at all. Other than the Beidu school's headmaster who saw some black flags, even the Dalan Temple's master Tiangang did not see anything. Since there was no justification for the attack, everyone's suspicions died down. In the past 2 days, many disciples from various sects had left, so there was no news of the tragedy. Therefore, Alliance Master Zhang San of the Alliance of Righteous Dao proposed that the various sects send their elite disciples to the Tenryu sect to investigate carefully to see if there were any clues left behind by the Tenryu sect. The various sects would return to their respective sects to recuperate and restore their strength. They would discuss the details after they found the Tenryu sect's flaws. Please vote monthly, recommend, bookmark, and tip me. Chapter 1202. Zhang Xiaohua's Beta school was newly built and only had a few junior sisters and disciples. It was still far from being a big school, so of course, she didn't know about the news in Jianghu. While she trained her disciples, she also hoped that the various sects in Jianghu would work together to attack the Tenrya sect. Back to the Yaoshan immortal abode, Zhang Xiaohua used the immortal's guardian spirit steel to set up a spirit gathering array in the palace where the phoenix had undergone nirvana. It gathered the qi of heaven and earth drifting within the immortal abode, as well as the qi of heaven and earth in the air above Yaoshan. The concentration of qi of heaven and earth in the palace increased by the day. A month's time wasn't long, but it wasn't short either. For the Misty School, it was just a short period of recuperation and preparation. But for the Beta School, this month's time was absolutely crucial. It was an earth-shattering change. For the people of Jianghu, the path of immortality was an ethereal and wonderful hope. There was an insurmountable gap between the path of martial arts and the path of immortality. In order to overcome this gap, the various sects in Jianghu racked their brains to find a smooth path to the path of immortality. The path of immortality's incense sect, the Dalan Temple, and the Alliance of Righteousness's path of martial arts set aside their personal grudges and joined hands to prepare a secret location, hoping to find a way to inherit the path of immortality in the secret location. All of this was because of the qi of heaven and earth. The lack of qi of heaven and earth was the main culprit behind the path of immortality 10,000 years ago. With the support of Zhang Xiaohua's spirit gathering array and the gradual recovery of qi of heaven and earth, the Beta School of Yaoshan Immortal Abode seized the opportunity to rise to the top of the path of immortality. Especially with the discovery of the Peiyuan pill, it was like Zhang Xiaohu's Dantian had Yang Haoya's True Yuan. It allowed the Beta School's disciples to have their first strand of true qi in their dantians when they first started cultivating the Carefree Sutra. They were also able to sense qi of heaven and earth at the first moment. What was difficult for others to draw qi into their bodies was too easy for them. Could it be that, in ancient times, stepping into the path of immortality was an extremely simple matter? Or is it that the 6 disciples of my Beta school are all rare talents? Zhang Xiaohua looked at the disciples sitting cross-legged under the spirit gathering array. She pinched the beard that had grown out of their chins and fell into deep thought. Under the 5 elements spirit gathering array, Zhang Xiaohua's disciples, with the exception of Zhang Bairen who was still lying down and sleeping, were all sitting cross-legged, pretending to be serious in their cultivation. Nye Qianyu was the first disciple Zhang Xiaohua had taught the first level of the Carefree Sutra. Nye Qianyu had already started cultivating diligently when Zhang Xiaohua was spreading the scourge of the incense cult. However, the qi of heaven and earth in Rejuvenation Valley was still limited. Although Nye Qianyu could sense qi of heaven and earth, the amount of qi that she could draw into her body was still very small. She was far from being able to refine it into true qi. Under the spirit gathering array, there was sufficient qi of heaven and earth to draw in. In addition, there was also a strand of true qi formed by the Peiyuan pill in her dantian. Under such circumstances, Nye Qianyu could easily draw the qi of heaven and earth into her body and refine it into her first strand of true qi. Before this, Zhang Xiaohua had also given Nye Qianyu a meridian nourishing pill, which had perfectly refined Nye Qianyu's meridians. This was like adding wings to a tiger. Nye Qianyu had become the first disciple of Beta school to set foot on the immortal Tao, and this had only taken Nye Qianyu 2 days. The second disciple to set foot on the immortal Tao had exceeded Zhang Xiaohua's expectations. Zhang Xiaohua had originally thought that this person would be Shui Tian. Unexpectedly, the ordinary-looking Ji Xiaohua, who had never practiced martial arts, had never come into contact with internal energy, and had never been placed with high hopes, had set foot on the immortal Tao 15 days later than Nye Qianyu and 3 days earlier than Shui Tian. This made Zhang Xiaohua go wild with joy. After all, this was still someone named Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua was happy to think that he could achieve such an achievement. Seeing that Ji Xiaohua, who had no foundation in martial arts, had set foot on the immortal Tao 1 step earlier than her, Shui Tian, who had always wanted to compete with Ji Xiaohua for the position of senior brother, became even more determined. However, it still took him 20 days to form his first strand of true qi in his dantian. In comparison, Chu Jing was neither hot nor cold. He set foot on the immortal Tao on the 22nd day. When Chu Zhigao and Chu Jing's grandmother learned of this, they ran to a corner of the lake, drew a small circle, burned some paper, and kowtowed with tears streaming down their faces, as if to comfort the ancestors of the Chu family in the immortal Tao. After the young disciples set foot on the immortal Tao, Yan and Zhang Pinger showed no signs of breaking through for the time being. After another 5 days, on the 27th day, Yan, who had no foundation in martial arts, set foot on the immortal Tao before Zhang Pinger. Zhang Pinger took 29 days to form her first strand of true qi in her dantian. Zhang Xiaohua thought of his discerning eyes and the fact that his disciples were all peerless talents. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but feel proud. If he knew that Peacock, Chen Chen, and Yuyan only had 18 days to stay in the inheritance palace of the incense cult, and that the three of them also set foot on the path of immortality within the time limit, what would he think? According to the rules of the incense cult, among these 6 disciples, only Nie Qianyu and Ji Xiaohua could be considered to have truly inherited the incense cult. And the other 4 were going to be eliminated? An Beidu School's spirit gathering array, and incense cult's spirit gathering array, was much stronger. From this, one could see how important the immortal mansion was to the 3 immortal Dao sections. One could also understand why Master Tiangang, Reverend Xu Qing, and Reverend Hao Yun would risk their lives, in order to seize the immortal mansion, into their own hands. This, if the immortal mansion was in the hands of the incense cult, wouldn't they be able to create many immortal Dao disciples in a short period of time? How could Reverend Jingyi be worried about her own inheritance? As for the incense cult, Misty School, and Shindao sect, the origin of the 3 immortal Dao sects, what about the secret plane? If the incense cult lost the Yaoshan immortal mansion, how could they not put all their energy into it? Just as Zhang Xiaohua was happily watching the 6 disciples under the spirit gathering array absorb the spirit gathering array into their bodies, and Zhang Bairen was sleeping soundly. The world's spirit gathering array was gradually being absorbed along with his breathing, and Little Black and Little Yellow were also using a strange posture beside him. The world's spirit gathering array was slowly being inhaled and exhaled by the 2 little things. In the Nanzhao town, which was hundreds of miles away from the secret plane, in the courtyard of a big family, Reverend Jingyi was sitting in a rather large central room, talking to Reverend Xu Qing, Reverend Xuezhen, Peacock, Chen Chen, and Yuyan. Reverend Jingyi frowned slightly and whispered, "Yao Shan. Immortal Mansion, has there been no movement?" Reporting to the sect leader, since the day Ren Xiaoyao took back the steps to Immortal Mansion, they haven't been put down, and no one has come down from Yao Shan. Reverend Xuezhen cupped her hands and said, "Ha! That guy is actually practicing in seclusion?" Chen Chen cried. "Not necessarily." Reverend Jingyi shook her head and said, "Every time the steps to Immortal Mansion are used, the amount of world spirit gathering array is enormous. I think, if Ren Xiaoyao wants to enter and leave Immortal Mansion, there must be another simple way. It's just that, as for what method, it's not something we can recklessly guess." Sect leader, didn't Ren Xiaoyao warn us? Don't leave anyone near Yao Shan. If we eat the disciples of the incense cult and investigate nearby, I'm afraid we'll provoke him, and make him unhappy. Peacock said worriedly. Hee, it's not just the disciples of the incense cult who aren't afraid. The Dalan Temple, between the clouds and the water, and the Righteous Alliance, which one of them didn't send spies? Reverend Jingyi waved her hand and said with a smile, "Even if Ren Xiaoyao finds out, we can just say that this disciple is a registered disciple of the incense cult. When he finds out, she has already been expelled from the cult. What she did at Yao Shan is her own behavior, it has nothing to do with the incense cult." Hee, sect leader is wise. Chen Chen heard this and laughed. That guy will have nothing to say. Forget it. Let's not talk about Yao Shan and Beidu School anymore. We were at Yao Shan, we were so angry, we tore our faces apart, and we even sacrificed Junior Shu Jie's life, but we still didn't gain any advantage. Instead, some nameless guy got ahead of us. I really don't know how he managed to control the entire immortal mansion. Reverend Shuqing waved her hand and said, "That guy is the best at stepping on dog shit." Chen Chen concluded. "Oh right, Junior Shuezhen, is there any news from the Dalan Temple?" Sect leader, ever since the monks of the Dalan Temple entered Baozhen, we couldn't find any trace of them. Our disciples didn't dare to go too deep, and after 10 days of investigation, we still couldn't find any news. Hehe, it's not a big deal. Who would have thought that the disciples of the incense cult have already returned to Jianqi Lake, and we can still stay in Nanzhao town. We'll just wait until tomorrow night, and the Dalan Temple will appear at Wuzhua Peak on time. Sect leader is wise, hiding in the city. That's right, I was thinking of finding a remote mountain village to settle down. What about the Righteous Alliance? Reverend Jingyi asked with a smile. The evil tiger gang in this area seems to be a small branch of the Righteous Alliance. Wouldn't Alliance leader Zhang Sen be like a fish in water here? He's long gone. Reverend Shuezhen laughed. Then. Misty School. What's Zhang Xiaohu doing? Sect leader, there's something strange about the Misty School. Reverend Shuezhen looked confused. I've sent disciples to inform Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng, but both of them said they were busy with internal affairs and couldn't come in person. That's fine, I have some spies among the disciples of Wuming Hall, but they also disappeared without a trace. There's no news at all. It's really strange. Then, what about the immortal senior from the Misty School? Is there any news? No. My disciples didn't find anything useful. If it wasn't for my scruples, when we were in the secluded ground, I would have captured Li Qian and the others and asked them what had happened to the ethereal sect. Please don't. Reverend Jingyi hurriedly waved her hand and said, to be able to restore the internal strength of Li Qian and thousands of other Misty School disciples. I'm afraid that even Master Tiangang of the Dalan Temple can't compare to this level of cultivation. At this juncture, we'd better hide. Chapter 1203. Leader, it's strange. Since the Misty School has such a senior immortal, why didn't he do anything when the Misty School was destroyed? Even this Yaoshan immortal abode. He didn't appear. Could it be that he doesn't care about the Yaoshan immortal abode? Shu Qingnan was surprised. This. Who knows? Nun Jingyi smiled bitterly. No matter whether he appeared or not, wouldn't Ren Xiaoyao have taken advantage of him in the end? If I knew this would happen, I would have let Shi Mujuan stab him to death on Lingxiang Peak. I'm afraid. Shi Mujuan is no match for Ren Xiaoyao. Peacock reminded her in a low voice. Isn't that so? Nun Jingyi gritted her teeth at the mention of this matter. Of all my calculations, I never thought that senior martial sister Jing Gang, Shi Mujuan and Yu Shuichuan were killed by this bastard. Sigh, it's not just leader. Although elder Jing Gang and her two disciples have grudges against Ren Xiaoyao, but, when it happened, he always had an alibi. We were all confused by his strength and thought that he was just a brute with great strength. Who would have thought that he was a man of immortality? Suddenly, Nun Jingyi seemed to have thought of something. Her expression was very interesting. Shu Qingnan noticed it and asked curiously, Leader? You? What did you think of? Grand Elder. I suddenly thought. Is Ren Xiaoyao the person who has a deep connection with the Misty School? Ah! Peacock and Chen Chen exclaimed and blurted out, No. No way. Shu Qingnan also shook her head slightly. I think it's impossible too. Nun Jingyi thought for a moment and said, Ren Xiaoyao came from Rejuvenation Valley with Peacock. Ever since Ren Xiaoyao came, how many things have happened in my sect? The sudden change in Twilight Orchid, the death of Grand Elder Jing Gang, the tremor in Mount Jiuhua, the collapse of the sect-protecting formation. Yes, there were also the thousands of Misty School disciples at Shixin Peak recovering their martial arts. I wouldn't have dared to think about these things in the past. But they all happened in the short span of a few months. I don't believe that it has nothing to do with Ren Xiaoyao. Hee, Jingyi, every single one of the things you've mentioned is shocking and can't be done without great magical powers. According to what I know, the sudden change in the Orchid Dusk refinement, the shaking of Mount Jiuhua, and the collapse of the sect-protecting formation are all natural disasters. I'm afraid only immortals can do these kinds of things related to heaven and earth. As for the other two, they might be Ren Xiaoyao's doing. Xu Qingnun nodded. Leader. I think Ren Xiaoyao has only been at Shixin Peak for a little more than 2 months. To recover the martial arts of thousands of Misty School disciples. I don't think he has that much time. Peacock thought for a moment and said. Also, who knows if the martial arts of the Misty School disciples were recovered at Shixin Peak or after they left Dianqi Lake. Chen Chen also added. Actually, leader. Swift said softly, whether Ren Xiaoyao is an immortal or not, that's another matter. Didn't you hear what Alliance leader Zhang San said? Ren Xiaoyao is only a martial artist. It's because he obtained the immortal mansion that he has so many magical powers. Jingyi Nun pondered for a moment and shook her head. If Ren Xiaoyao killed Great Elder Jing Gang, all of this can be easily explained. If it wasn't him, then it's even more confusing. Many things can't be explained. But if Ren Xiaoyao is only a martial artist, and he borrowed the power of the Immortal Mansion, then what we saw in the Immortal Mansion can be explained. Sigh, let's not talk about it. Even if Ren Xiaoyao is the real culprit, we can't do anything if he hides in the Immortal Mansion of Mount Yaoshan. Leader is right. Master Jing Xian's death is as confusing as Master Jing Gang's death. At that time, Ren Xiaoyao hadn't come to our incense cult. It's not good to blame Ren Xiaoyao. Peacock agreed. Everything depends on strength. Let's first deal with the matter of the secret plane. If we can find the method of inheritance in the secret plane this year, our incense cult will be able to cultivate more immortal disciples. In a few years, not only our incense cult, but also the Dalan Temple, Misty School, and even the Alliance of Righteous Path will have many immortal disciples. At that time, we'll be able to raise our voices and verify this matter with Ren Xiaoyao. Jingyi Nun said coldly, Misty School's Zhang Xiaohu, has he left for the Five Claw Peak? Leader, 5 days ago, I sent a disciple to Ethereal Heights to urge Zhang Xiaohu. I think he won't delay the gathering tomorrow. Of course, the secret plane is a great temptation for the 4 immortal sections. Zhang Xiaohu has no reason not to be tempted. Moreover, this is also a promise from him. Abbess Jingyi suddenly thought of something and turned to ask, that's right, where's Bai Yanqiu from Shuiyan Club? She's a very ambitious woman. About the secret plane, we have to be careful of her. Leader, Bai Yanqiu went all the way south. After walking for 100 miles, she disappeared. I can't tell. Since there is no trace of them, that is extremely normal. If we let our disciples see their traces all the time, it would be more conspicuous if we tried to cover it up. Abbess Jingyi laughed and said, only Chang Xingdashi, Zhang San, Alliance leader Zhang San, and our cult were conspiring about the secret plane. Even Zhang Xiaohu only found out about it a month ago. Even if Bai Yanqiu's magical power is extensive, she definitely wouldn't know that after we left Yaoshan Immortal Mansion, we immediately made our move at Five Claw Peak. She must have hurried back with Immortal Hao Yun to heal. Yes, if Chen Chen didn't get that 9-heaven Black Lotus seed in Yaoshan Immortal Mansion, my injury wouldn't have healed as fast as us. Immortal Hao Yun and the others must still be worried about their injuries. Xu Qingnun said with a smile. That's right. In this way, apart from Beta School, my fragrance cult has benefited the most from Yaoshan Immortal Mansion. Jingyi Nun smiled and said, in addition to the Heaven and Earth handkerchief, the 9-heaven Black Lotus seed, 2 flying swords, several magic weapons, and even 3 immortal cultivation methods, yes, leader. This Ren Xiaoyao is definitely not a heartless person. Otherwise, he would never let us take these things away. Peacock nodded and said. Sigh, even if that's the case, senior sister, think about it again. In this Yaoshan immortal mansion, how many good things would there be? Chen Chen was quite envious. This guy is really lucky. No matter how many treasures there are, they're still his. What's there to be envious about? Peacock glared at her. That guy. Chen Chen narrowed her eyes and clenched her teeth tightly. It was as if she wanted to bite off more things from that guy in her heart. In the distant Yaoshan immortal mansion, that guy in Chen Chen's heart had already been bitten into 70 or 80 pieces. At this time, he was teaching Nye Qianyu some formation problems. To be honest, as a master, he was not very competent. Other than providing some cultivation methods, some elixirs, some cultivation experience, and some formation arrangements, he could not explain the other details of cultivation, things to pay attention to, and so on. After all, Zhang Xiaohua's method of cultivating the Carefree Sutra was rather strange. Who in this world would dare to try it? Even Zhang Bairen would not dare. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua knew his own situation. From the beginning, he had planned to let each disciple walk on their own path of cultivation. As the master, he only gave a little guidance. In this way, these 7 disciples would have 7 different paths. Fortunately, other than the Carefree Sutra and the orthodoxy of Fire Dragon Immortal, there were also many cultivation methods in the White Attic. They were not inferior to the inheritance of the Misty School. In addition to the red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple attic, there were also cultivation methods and artifacts that Zhang Xiaohua did not have the ability to obtain. This Beidu school's disciples could be said to have unlimited room for development and unlimited potential. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua, who was demonstrating the incantation to Nye Qianyu, felt his heart throbbing. It was as if there were countless invisible hands grasping his heart tightly and squeezing it into countless tiny pieces. Zhang Xiaohua was caught off guard. He screamed and fell into the void unknowingly. Senior brother sect leader. Nye Qianyu was anxious. Just as she was about to go forward, she saw the pale-faced Zhang Xiaohua quickly fly up again. His eyes were full of fear and his forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat. He looked around in panic. Master! The disciples who were cultivating nearby were also awakened and ran over. All right, it's all right. Zhang Xiaohua straightened his body and took a deep breath. He waved his hand and said, I'm all right. You all can leave for now. This. Yes, Master. After hearing this, the disciples hesitated for a while and left. Byron and the 2 little ones also left. After everyone left, Zhang Xiaohua flew to the spirit gathering array and sat down cross-legged. He closed his eyes and adjusted his breathing. The sudden throbbing just now was very short. When Nye Qianyu cried out, the throbbing had already disappeared without a trace. After a long while, Zhang Xiaohua stretched out his hands. The fingers on his left and right hands constantly moved, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, from simple to complex, and finally almost mysterious. Zhang Xiaohua's body gradually formed a faint shadow. The shadow was like a glimmer of light gradually becoming clear. Looking at the gradually forming outline, it was really Zhang Xiaohua's Sky Dao's starry sky, the increasingly clear hand of karma. And the movement of Zhang Xiaohua's technique was exactly the way of karma that he had been comprehending recently. With a loud bang, just when the hand of karma had a certain degree of outline, Zhang Xiaohua's heart moved again. He could no longer control the qi between his fingers. Zhang Xiaohua had no choice but to withdraw his hands. The hand of light and shadow around him suddenly collapsed. Then, Zhang Xiaohua spat out a small mouthful of blood. His face was full of dispiritedness. Zhang Xiaohua sighed and sat cross-legged. He looked up at the spirit gathering array that was not very rich in the qi of heaven and earth. He took out a small yuan stone from his arms and adjusted his breathing. After an unknown period of time, a faint brilliance appeared from the void and flew to Zhang Xiaohua. It stopped in front of Zhang Xiaohua and stopped moving. Come on, please come to the palace for a chat. With that, she threw out the cross-shaped magic instrument and called everyone to come into the light circle. With a flash of light, everyone came to the Lingxiao Palace. Needless to say, the people of Misty School only woke up from the shock after a long time. Their eyes were filled with eagerness and awe. They looked at Zhang Xiaohua with more respect. Zhang Xiaohua sat on the central throne and smiled in a low voice. Everyone, the position in the Lingxiao Palace is determined by the profound cultivation. It's not that I don't want you to come close. Please forgive me. He, sect leader Zhang, although your sect did not deliberately publicize the matter of the Yaoshan immortal abode, the unimaginable abnormality has long been spread among the disciples of various sections. The name of the Lingxiao Palace is also strange. My ethereal sect has already received the news from the pugilistic world. If we can all get close to the central throne, I'm afraid this immortal mansion would have been controlled by the Dalan Temple and the Xiangxiang cult. Hu Yuni bowed and smiled. Yes, Elder Hu is right. I didn't mean to be rude. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, Oh right, Elder Hu, I wonder, does your Misty School have anything to discuss with my Beta School? Hu Yuni turned around and glanced at Zhang Xiaohu. Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, Elder Hu, Xiaohua is this seat's blood brother. If it's related to this seat, then there's naturally no need for you to step forward. This seat only needs to talk to him. But if it's something related to the Misty School, Xiaohua has already helped my Misty School a lot. My Misty School. Ahem, to be honest, I can't repay him. So, it's not easy for me to talk about the matters between the Misty School and Beta School. Haha, Master Zhang, my big sect leader means, if he asks, I'm afraid you won't agree to everything. If you were alone in the past, we would have just talked about it. But now you're the master of Beta School and you have disciples. I'm old. I don't dare. Elder Hu, please enlighten me. Oh Yen said. Well, this time, I came to Misty School because I have 3 things to discuss with Beta School. Hu Yuni said with a serious face. 3 things? Oh Yen nodded. Elder Hu, please tell me one by one. Sect leader Zhang. Hu Yuni looked at Oh Yen, then cupped his hands and said to Zhang Xiaohua, actually, sect leader Zhang's kindness to Misty School is like a new life. To be honest, my Misty School's conditions to Beta School are somewhat belittling. Even if these conditions are not discussed with Beta School, as long as Beta School needs my Misty School to do something, my Misty School should agree to it. Didn't Elder Hu say it just now? In the past, I was the one who helped my second brother, so it can be considered I's own matters. These matters, everyone is well aware of them. Just use them as the basis for the cooperation between our 2 sections. There's no need to mention them again. Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. Sect leader Zhang's breadth of mind. I admire you. Hu Yuni nodded and said, I remember that when sect leader Zhang took Shui Tian in as your disciple, you asked Tian about the fist techniques she used to practice in Misty School. After my investigation, I confirmed that there are a total of 321 disciples in the Young Eagle Hall of Misty School who practiced Beta School's fist techniques under Zhang Qingyue and Shui Tiantian's guidance. Furthermore, there are still 303 disciples alive. Please vote monthly, recommend, bookmark, and tip. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote monthly and recommend at Shidian. Calm. Chapter 1205. Seeing that Oh Yen was somewhat puzzled, Hu Yuni continued, Beta School is newly established, and there's only sect leader Zhang and 7 disciples in the school. This really doesn't match the reputation of Beta School. My Misty School has nothing to congratulate you on. These 302 disciples will be sent to Beta School as ordinary disciples. Firstly, it's a congratulatory gift, and secondly, it's a bit of repayment for sect leader Zhang's kindness to my Misty School. Oh? Oh, Yen stared blankly for a moment, then her face immediately lit up with joy. She said happily, Elder Hu's gift is very good. It can be said to be timely assistance. However, these Kitty Hawk Hall disciples have been nurtured by Misty School since they were young. Elder Hu, doesn't your heart ache if you give them to my Beta School all of a sudden? Hehe, Yen Zi's words are very true. These 302 disciples were all people I took away from Misty Mountain Villa in the past. These many years, I've been living with them day and night, and I have deep feelings for them. I indeed have high hopes for them. However, if these disciples are compared to the great kindness that Beta School has shown to my Misty School, the difference is too great. Only by giving these disciples to Beta School and expanding Beta School's strength can I express my Misty School's gratitude. That's right, Elder Hu. These 302 Kitty Hawk Hall disciples have been nurtured by Misty School since they were young. Since they were young, they've regarded Misty School as their sect. Now that they've suddenly come to Beta School, I'm afraid, it won't be easy to restrain them. Oh, Yen asked calmly. Hu Yini nodded and said, Yen Zi's question is indeed good. However, these disciples are still young, and most of them are about the same age as Shui Tian. They've been living outside Misty Mountain Villa for the past few years, and their feelings towards Misty School are a lot weaker than those of ordinary disciples. Of course, I'm not saying that they don't have Misty School in their hearts. It's just that people strive for greater heights, and water flows to lower depths. Beta School stands at the forefront of the path of immortality and occupies Mount Yaoshan Immortal Mansion. If they know that they can cultivate an immortal mansion, I'm afraid, not everyone will fight to the death. Oh, Yen nodded slightly. Also, with the relationship between sect leader Zhang of the Misty School and sect leader Zhang of your sect, I'm sure they'll be able to accept the transfer from the Misty School to the Beta School. Elder Hu said with a smile. Sect leader Zhang, to be honest, there are some drawbacks in sending young disciples here. If it were any other sect, our Misty School would never dare to do such a thing. It's easy to cause misunderstandings. When Wenhai cupped his hands and said, however, I'm thinking the same thing as you, Elder Hu. Beta School doesn't lack anything except for manpower. As for the development of Beta School, if we only rely on Miss O, Miss Nya, Shui Tian, and the others, I'm afraid we won't be able to develop even a little bit in the next 10 years. Elder Hu made this suggestion, and gang leader Zhang also agreed. I think it's really feasible, so I made the suggestion. Zhang Xiaohua looked at Zhang Xiaohu's smiling face and knew that this guy must know that she had the soul-absorbing pill and wasn't afraid of spies, so she agreed. Of course, Zhang Xiaohua did not care about what tricks the ethereal sect had up their sleeves. After all, in this immortal abode, with the mansion guarding spiritual steel in hand, everyone could only surrender and be manipulated. Zhang Xiaohua still had a lot of trust in Wen Wenhai. Seeing Wen Wenhai's explanation, she nodded slightly and said, I understand what Swordsman Wen said. This. Hu Yini thought for a moment, then smiled bitterly and said, actually, what our Misty School can do for Beta School is too little. We can only show the strength of our Misty School in the next few years. When the Beta School's young disciples are fully developed, our Misty School won't be able to catch the eye of Beta School. So, overall, I'm afraid that our Misty School won't have too many immortal path experts. Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. Just as she was about to agree, Oh Yen said, Elder Hu, that's not right. As the saying goes, small streams flow long. Our Beta School's disciples are all focused on cultivation. I'm afraid that we won't interfere much with worldly affairs. If our Misty School does a good job, we might be able to hand over everything to the Misty School in the future. Elder Hu was overjoyed when he heard this. He smiled and said, if that's the case, the number of disciples per year can be reduced to 4. 2. Oh Yen said, our Beta School still has its own disciples. 2 is indeed too little. How about 3? Elder Hu said earnestly. This. Oh Yen turned to look at Zhang Xiaohua. She seemed to be satisfied and wanted Zhang Xiaohua to make the decision. He. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, I'll allow this, but there are still some other conditions. Ah. Approved? Hu Yuni was stunned. Then, he was overjoyed. How many Immortal Path disciples could there be in the pugilistic world? Beta School could actually let 3 Misty School disciples enter the path of immortality every year. Not to mention 5 years, in just 3 years, 9 disciples would enter the path of immortality. This was comparable to the incense cult. Zhang Xiaohu didn't reveal Hu Yuni's bottom line in advance, but judging from his surprised expression, it was obviously beyond his expectations. Yes, I'll allow it. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, not only that, everyone in the Misty School in the main hall, as long as it's possible, I can help you enter the path of immortality. Ah! Wen Wenhai, Lu Yueming, and Xue Qing's faces were flushed. They knew that Zhang Xiaohu was about the same age as them. If Zhang Xiaohu could enter the path of immortality, then so could they. Li Jian and the others were already old, so Zhang Xiaohua's words were obviously meant for them. Hu Yuni, Li Jian, Lu Qingyang, and Madame Qin were also overjoyed. The incense cult and Between the Clouds and the Water both had methods to enter the path of immortality through martial arts. Beidu School must have some methods as well. Thank you, sect leader Zhang. Everyone bowed. Don't be in such a hurry to thank me. I's help isn't without conditions. Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, the things you need to raise your cultivation to the path of immortality must be provided by your Misty School. Also, the techniques and pills used by the 3 disciples must also be provided by your Misty School. This. Hu Yuni and Li Jian were at a loss for words. They didn't know that 3 things were needed for 3 disciples to enter the path of immortality, so they could only turn to look at Zhang Xiaohu. Zhang Xiaohu nodded and said, these conditions, my Misty School agrees. After all, these things need a lot of money, so there's no reason for Beta School to pay for my Misty School. Since sect leader Zhang agrees, then it's easy to handle. Zhang Xiaohua clapped her hands and smiled. Zhang Xiaohu glared at him but didn't say anything. Seeing that the 2 factions had reached an agreement, Oh Yen was also happy. She asked, then what's the 3rd suggestion, Elder Hu? Oh, this 3rd suggestion isn't anything special. It's just an addition to the first 2 suggestions. It's the icing on the cake. Hu Yini thought for a moment and said, if sect leader Zhang doesn't have any objections to the first 2 suggestions, my Misty School and Beta School would like to further form an alliance. Under the premise of complementing each other, we can advance and retreat together in the Jianghu, going through thick and thin together. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, he couldn't help but frown. He had previously told Zhang Xiaohu about this relationship, hoping that Beta School and Misty School could become close brothers, just like he and his second brother. However, he had only said it casually back then. Moreover, Beta School hadn't been established yet, so it was easy for him to say it without thinking about the consequences of his words. Now that he heard Hu Yuni and Oh Yan's negotiation, Zhang Xiaohua realized that his previous thoughts might have been too simple. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's frown, Oh Yan couldn't make a decision. She thought for a moment and said, Elder Hu, can you elaborate further? Hu Yuni also said seriously, actually, this 3rd suggestion is something we suddenly thought of before we came. Since our Misty School's sect leader Zhang and your sect's sect leader Zhang are blood brothers, we dare to make this suggestion. I can't explain it in detail, but if our Misty School is in danger of being wiped out, I hope that your sect's sect leader will lend us a helping hand. Our Misty School will also take responsibility for all of your sect's trivial matters in the Jianghu. When Oh Yen heard this, she frowned. This exchange seemed to be extremely disproportionate. The Misty School had only helped Beta School with a simple matter, but in exchange, they had asked for Beta School's help when their own sect was about to be wiped out. This really didn't make sense. Please vote monthly, recommend, bookmark, and tip. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote monthly and recommend at Chidian.com. This disciple deserves to die. Sigh, don't mention the past anymore. Hu Yini sighed. This isn't your fault. It's all Shui Yupeng's fault. He was blinded by greed and used you as a tool. What crime have you committed? But, he's still this disciple's father. This disciple thinks about it day and night. I don't have the face to see Grandmaster again. Actually, thinking about it again, Shui Yupeng had no choice but to do this for your safety. This old man. Sigh, forget it. He's already gone. My poison and serious injuries have been cured by your master. You don't have to blame yourself too much. This old man has no son and has always treated you like a grandson. As long as you're doing well in Beta school, this old man is happier than anything else. Speaking of which, during the years when Hu Yuni led the Misty School's disciples to exile, he had been carefully cultivating Shui Tian, treating him as the future hope of the Misty School. After a long time, he naturally developed feelings for him. Although Shui Yupeng's scheme was involved in the end, it was impossible for Hu Yuni to resent Shui Tian. This disciple knows. This disciple is very happy in Beidu school. Shui Tian said with tears on his face. Suddenly, as if he had something fun to share with the adults, Shui Tian couldn't hold back the joy on his face. He looked at Hu Yuni and said, Grandmaster, this disciple has something to tell you. Seeing how Shui Tian seemed to be hiding an excellent toy and wanted to show it to Hu Yuni in hopes of receiving his praise, Hu Yuni's heart softened. He recalled how Shui Tian would always show off to him when he was young before he mastered a move. Hu Yuni's tone became even more benevolent. What's wrong? Tian. What kind of martial art did you master? Yes. Grandmaster. Shui Tian was just about to say something when he thought of something. He quickly turned around and looked at Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua didn't know and only nodded slightly to express her agreement. Only then did Shui Tian turn around and say with a smile, when this disciple was following Grandmaster always said. If this disciple mastered martial arts in the future, I would be able to inherit the Misty School's immortal path and step onto the immortal path. You also said that your greatest wish was to let this disciple step onto the immortal path. To revitalize the Misty School. Sigh, that's right. If that wasn't the case, I wouldn't have almost fought with sect leader Zhang and let the Righteous Alliance take advantage of me for nothing. Hu Yuni sighed and said, at that time, my body was already on the verge of death. If I didn't make arrangements for you, my Misty School would never be able to rise again. However, fortunately, sect leader Zhang is the pillar of my Misty School. This old man has long been relieved. Grandmaster, this disciple has already stepped onto the immortal path a few days ago. Shui Tian said with a smile. Ah! Hu Yuni was stunned and immediately became ecstatic. Tian, you're also a person of the immortal path? Yes, Grandmaster, this disciple is stupid. I even entered the immortal path after senior brother Ji. It's nothing. Shui Tian said shyly. Ji Xiaohua. Hu Yuni was even more shocked. He also stepped onto the immortal path. However, he immediately felt that it was inappropriate and immediately cupped his hands at Zhang Xiaohua. Sect leader Zhang, this old man's tone is a little reckless. It's because I've seen Xiaohua before. He doesn't have any foundation in martial arts at all. That's why I'm so surprised. It's fine. Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. Then, sect leader Zhang, how many of your disciples have yet to step onto the immortal path? Li Jian suppressed his surprise and couldn't help but probe. Zhang Xiaohua's face was burning. He whispered, "Hey, this jade talisman is not very successful. If it's perfect, it should look like a rabbit." "Is it really a rabbit?" Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, "I thought I was wrong." Then, he carefully put the jade talisman into his arms and said, "A rabbit is not bad. It's better than an ingot." Second brother Zhang Xiaohua shouted. The others were puzzled, but seeing Zhang Xiaohu's treasured look, they also carefully put away the jade talisman. "Let's go." Zhang Xiaohu ignored Zhang Xiaohua and looked around. He waved his hand and said, "Vice Gang Leader Wen, please lead the way." At this time, the sky was getting dark and the evening mist was heavy. Li Jian, Lu Qingyang, Wen Wenhai, Lu Yueming and Zhang Xiaohu used their qinggong to hide their presence and went to Five Claw Peak. Zhang Xiaohua hid her figure and followed Zhang Xiaohu's back. The night had already fallen, and the round moon was gradually moving towards the sky. Tonight was a clear and sunny day. Under the water-like moonlight, the Five Claw Peak pierced straight into the night sky. A chilly wind blew past, blowing the withered grass and yellow leaves into the air. A few after-images flashed past, and then their silhouettes appeared in the moonlight. Below the Thumb Peak, on a large piece of flat land, Zhang Xiaohu and the others stopped next to a crouching ox rock. Reporting to sect leader Zhang, "It's here." Last time, lay practitioner Yan Ming said it was next to this crouching ox rock. Looking at the crouching ox rock, which was exactly the same as it was a few years ago, Wen Wenhai couldn't help but feel emotional. He pointed at the rock and said to Zhang Xiaohu, "Good." Zhang Xiaohu looked at the sky and asked, "It's already past 9, where are the people from the Dalan Temple and incense cult?" Before he finished speaking, Zhang Xiaohua whispered something to him. "Oh? Understood." Zhang Xiaohu nodded slightly, looked around, and jumped onto the crouching ox rock. He sat down cross-legged, as if he was regulating his qi circulation. Li Jian and the others were in a protective position, surrounding the crouching ox rock. After half an hour, a slight rustling sound came from the east. When Zhang Xiaohu opened his eyes, he saw several Dalan temple monks in monk robes had quietly appeared not far from the crouching ox rock. Under the moonlight, they were Master Chang Sheng, Great Master Chang Gung, Master Chang Xing, and 3 skinny monks. Zhang Xiaohu had already received information that these 3 skinny monks were Master Tiangang, Master Yuandao, and Master Yuanming. He immediately felt deep veneration for them. He jumped up from the crouching ox rock and went forward to salute them. Zhang Xiaohu from the Misty School greets Master Chang Sheng and all the other masters. Master Chang Sheng and the others floated in the air and arrived at the scene. When they used their divine senses, they noticed Zhang Xiaohua standing not far behind Zhang Xiaohu. When they saw Zhang Xiaohu coming over to salute them, only Master Chang Sheng put his palms together and smiled. "Sect leader Zhang, you're early." "I wouldn't dare. I'm a junior in Jianghu. Since I've been summoned by my seniors, of course I have to wait early," Zhang Xiaohu said respectfully. Although the Dalan Temple was one of the participants in destroying the Misty School that day, Zhang Xiaohu did not directly confront the Dalan Temple. There were not many monks that day, and Master Chang Sheng had a good reputation in Jianghu. He did not allow Zhang Xiaohu to be disrespectful. Amitabha, Master Chang Sheng chanted the name of Buddha. He then raised his head and said, "How should I address all of you? Why haven't I seen you before? My name is Panin. I've been cultivating in seclusion. I'm a nameless itinerant cultivator. It's normal that the elders don't know I. Because I have an old relationship with the seniors of the Misty School, I also received some favors from the seniors of the Misty School. By chance, I found out that the Misty School was in trouble. That's why I lent a helping hand. However, I don't care about worldly affairs. The affairs of Jianghu are intertwined with gratitude and grudges. It's hard to say who's right and who's wrong. Your grudges? I don't care. Fellow Taoist, you're very generous. Thousands of people from the Misty School, all of them recovered their martial arts. Even I feel ashamed of my inferiority. How can I be a nameless itinerant cultivator? However, I don't know if the Misty School has passed down any immortal cultivation techniques for generations. Master Tian Gang said in a low voice. Master Tian Gang's name is well known throughout the world. I've admired you for a long time. However, I don't like fighting and lack the desire to win. Master. I'm afraid we're not fated to meet. Just as they were talking, another voice sounded, Master Panin, you live up to your name. I've admired you for a long time. Zhang Xiaohua raised her head and saw a group of people slowly approaching from the mountain path not far away. They were the Misty School's disciples who had arrived earlier. Looking at Nun Jingyi, who was speaking, Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, You're just a piece of trash. How can you live up to your name? Nun eyes admiration, but I can't accept it. While they were talking, the Misty School's disciples had arrived. They were Nun Jingyi, Nun Shuqing, Nun Shuezhen, Peacock, Chen Chen, and Yuyan. Fellow Daoist, your name has spread throughout Jianghu before the Yaoshan Immortal Mansion. I don't know how many people admire you, but I wonder, why didn't you come to the fight for the Immortal Mansion? If you did, I'm afraid that the Yaoshan Immortal Mansion wouldn't belong to Beta School anymore. The appearance of the Immortal Mansion can only be obtained by the virtuous. I have never dared to consider myself virtuous, and I'm used to cultivating in a quiet place. As for the Yaoshan Immortal Mansion, it's better to keep it, as bait for others. Hearing this, Master Tian Gang, Nun Shuqing, and the others' faces changed slightly. The Yaoshan Immortal Mansion wasn't just their bait, it was the bait for the entire Jianghu. All the sects in Jianghu were defeated at Yaoshan Immortal Mansion. If there was any sect that benefited, other than the Beta School, it would be the Misty School that didn't participate in the fight for the Yaoshan Immortal Mansion at all. Nun Jingyi stood not far away, coldly looking at Zhang Xiaohu, and calmly said, Sect leader Zhang, it's only been a few months since we parted at Mo Sun Gong. Are you, well? Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohu smiled, but didn't go forward. He cupped his hands and saluted, Ever since I left Lingering Fragrance Peak, I've been very well. Thank you for your concern, Nun. As for the grudge between the Misty School and the Incense Cult, I don't think I need to say anything. I've already told the inner sect disciple you sent, so there's no need for me to repeat myself. Sect leader Zhang's methods are good. Even I admire you greatly. In addition, this sect leader Panin behind you is actually playing with the incense cult in the palm of his hand. I truly admire you. Nun Jingyi, do you think my Misty School's torment is light? Lu Qingyang shouted, If it weren't for my sect leader Zhang's wisdom and courage, my Misty School would be. Chapter 12:10. Cough, cough. Zhang Xiaohu coughed softly, and Lu Qingyang's voice immediately softened. I've already told you about the Misty School at Lingering Fragrance Peak. The reason behind it isn't as simple as you think. If you're talking about torment, there are also people like Master Longevity from the Dalan Temple. You can ask them too. Sigh. Sect leader Zhang, I feel guilty about what happened in the past. Everything was used by others. I'm sure sect leader Zhang already knows about it, but I don't want to explain. Master Longevity smiled bitterly. Alright, the mastermind from back then is here. Nun Jingyi said softly. Sure enough, Zhang Xiaohu had already sensed something. From the side of the Crouching Ox Rock, in the forest to the south, a few figures were also flying over with lightness skills. It was Alliance leader Zhang San from the Alliance of Righteous Sects. When enemies meet, their eyes turn red. Li Jian and the others narrowed their eyes when they saw the familiar figures. Lu Qingyang's fists were already clenched, cough, cough. Master Longevity coughed and said softly, Sect leader Zhang. Today is a big day for the 4 sections. Don't delay the great cause of the Misty School because of some small matter. Of course. Our ethereal sect has always prioritized the big picture. How can we create more trouble at this time? Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohu looked at Nun Jingyi in Master Longevity and said with a smile. Oh right, sect leader Zhang, how are Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng? How are my thousands of Wuming Hall disciples? This time, when our inner disciples went over, they actually avoided meeting them. I'm surprised. Nun Jingyi suddenly asked. Hee. Nun, you're really forgetful. Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng admire our Misty School's legacy and specially joined our Misty School. They've always relied on the inner disciples in spreading fragrance cult. When they came to our Misty School, they became the masters. Right now, they're carefree on Misty Peak. How can they have the time to care about you? Zhang Xiaohu had already thought of a countermeasure. When she heard this, Nun Jingyi almost exploded in anger. You! Nun Jingyi's voice grew louder. Abbess! Today is a big day for the 4 sections. Don't delay the great cause of the incense cult because of some small matter. Abbess, please conduct yourself with dignity. Zhang Xiaohu looked at Abbess Jingyi and said with a smile. You! Nun Jingyi's lips trembled. Cough cough. When Master Longevity saw this, he quickly coughed a few times. He turned to Alliance Leader Zhang San and said, Alliance Leader Zhang San, why, are you late? Sigh, Master. Alliance Master Zhang San looked at the 5 inner force experts beside him and smiled bitterly. Ever since we parted ways at Yaoshan Mountain, our alliance has been hiding nearby. But Bai Yanqiu from between the clouds and the water seems to have sensed our presence. He has been searching for our whereabouts all this time. If it was before, our alliance might not have been afraid. But now, our alliance did not bring enough manpower, and there are also immortal experts between the clouds and the water. Our alliance can only endure. Between the clouds and the water, actually sense something. Master Longevity was slightly stunned. He immediately released his divine sense and looked for a while. He then turned to Master Tiangang and asked, Master, is there anything strange around here? Master Tiangang shook his head slightly. Master Longevity let out a sigh of relief. He knew that Alliance Leader Zhang San did not have an immortal divine sense. If he was being followed, he might not know. Master Tiangong's divine sense was the strongest among all of them. If he did not sense anything, then it must be nothing. Alright, the people of our 4 sects have gathered. Let's go to the secret plane according to our original agreement. Master Longevity waved his hand and said, no matter what grudges there were between our 4 sects, before we come out of the secret plane, there must be no friction. Everyone knows that Beta School has taken the initiative in the Yaoshan Immortal Abode. This secret plane is the key to the revival of our 4 sections. If anyone messes up this important matter, the other 3 sects will join forces to punish them. Alliance Leader Zhang San stood not far from Zhang Xiaohu. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but after hearing Master Longevity's words, he swallowed his words. Let's go. Master Longevity waved his sleeves and took the lead. Master Tiangang and the others also floated in the air and followed. Then, the incense cult followed. Alliance Leader Zhang San was about to move when he heard Zhang Xiaohu say in a low voice, does the martial arts sect have to walk before the immortal path? As he spoke, he leaped up and used the ethereal steps, which was comparable to the levitation technique. He lightly brought Li Jian and the others with him. You! Alliance Master Zhang San was furious. Just as he was about to regain some of his dignity, he felt a frosty gaze sweep past Zhang Xiaohu. Ah! Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's handsome face, he jumped. Daoist Pan. Alliance Leader Zhang San almost groaned. Humph! Zhang Xiaohua snorted coldly and used the levitation technique. Her body floated in the air and followed behind Lu Yueming, heading towards the direction of the ring finger of 5 Claws Peak. This! Alliance Leader Zhang San was a little dumbfounded. Looking at their backs, he couldn't help but grit his teeth and touch his chest a few times. Then, he waved his hand and said in a low voice, "Let's go." Everyone's qigong was excellent and they even had the levitation technique. In less than half an hour, they arrived at the dense forest in the middle of the Ring Finger Peak. The dark and silent forest was like a monster that had not moved since ancient times. It was lying there quietly. Even the brilliance of snow could not cover the forest. Zhang Xiaohua used her divine sense to scan the forest. She felt that the forest was exactly the same as when she first came. There was nothing special about it. However, when her divine sense swept past every jujube tree, a trace of uneasiness was transmitted from her divine sense to her heart. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. She thought of the indescribable throbbing in her heart before the Misty School's visit. She couldn't help but be shocked. She thought to herself, could it be that, tonight's trip, is a great omen? The more she thought about it, the more mysterious the jujube forest became in her eyes. Faction leader Zhang, this jujube forest. I'm afraid there's something strange about it. Zhang Xiaohua said in a low voice, with eyes cultivation, it's difficult to see the truth of this place, if it's possible. Without waiting for Zhang Xiaohua to finish, Master Changsheng said in a low voice, everyone, this place is an ancient divine array. If you don't have the map that leads to the array, no matter what your cultivation is, as long as you enter the forest, you'll definitely die. There are records of this place in the ancient books of the Dalan Temple. It's also very clear that you should never take the risk to enter. You're right, Master Changsheng. Our incense cult also has similar records. Moreover, this sheepskin scroll has been lost tens of thousands of years ago, so we've all put this forest at the back of our minds. Now that the map has reappeared, it's time for our 4 schools of immortal Tao to revive. Nun Jingyi nodded. Alright, according to the ancient books, this forest's array can only be opened under the morning sun on the 15th day of the first lunar month. At any other time, it's a dead array. Therefore, we'll have to wait here until tomorrow morning to enter the array. Master Changsheng continued, by the way, someone from the Misty School entered the array a few years ago. Is this old monk's words true? Reporting to Master Changsheng, our vice-faction leader Wen Wenhai entered this array a few years ago. It's exactly as you said. Zhang Xiaohu looked at Wen Wenhai and stepped forward. That's good. Since someone from the Misty School has entered, tomorrow morning, let's invite the Misty School to be the first to enter. What do you all think? Everyone hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Well, since someone from the Misty School has entered, I wonder if you can tell us in detail about the layout of the secret plane? Master Changsheng asked with a smile. Master, after we enter, if there are treasures, how should we distribute them? We haven't finished discussing these matters, yet you want the Misty School to provide information. I'm afraid it's not appropriate. Zhang Xiaohu said with a smile. Oh? Master Changsheng was stunned. Nun Jingyi said apologetically, since faction leader Zhang didn't want to see us, we could only send our inner disciples to pass the message. We haven't told faction leader Zhang the specific details yet. Yes, Master Changsheng nodded slightly and said, according to the ancient books, the secret plane is quite large. Some places have their own universe. It's far from the size of the mountain we see now. Therefore, when the 4 sects enter, we'll divide whatever we see equally. If we can't divide it equally, the sect that wants to get the remaining items will have to compensate the other 3 sections. As for the items within the restriction, it'll depend on each sect's actions. Whoever has the ability to take more will take it based on their ability. After he finished speaking, he said to Zhang Xiaohu, faction leader Zhang, what do you think of this method? Zhang Xiaohu was speechless. He looked at Master Changsheng, Great Master Changgung, and Master Changxing behind him. Well, there were also 3 skinny and shriveled masters. He felt bitter in his mouth. Was there a need to say more? The inside was full of immortal Tao restrictions. The Dalan Temple had come prepared. Of course, they would take the lead. However, thinking about the unpredictable Zhang Xiaohua, Zhang Xiaohu cupped his hands and said, "Of course, the secret plane? We have to rely on our own strength to fight for treasures. If we walk behind others, we'll only be blind." Then, he glanced sideways at Alliance leader Zhang San. At this time, Alliance leader Zhang San had already calmed down, as if he hadn't heard anything. He raised his head to look at the dense forest under the moonlight, his eyes full of admiration. "Well, would Vice Faction Leader Wen please explain a little?" Master Chongsheng said with a smile. "Yes, please wait a moment." Zhang Xiaohu turned his head and gave Wen Wenhai a look. Thus, Wen Wenhai whispered about the last time they entered the dense forest. The process wasn't very detailed, and the objects inside were also vague. "What? Is there only such a small place?" Master Chongsheng frowned. "Are there only those old medicinal herbs inside?" Nun Jingyi was also shocked. Speaking of medicinal herbs, there were many in Yulon Grand Canyon. Her incense cult didn't need to mess around here. Reporting to the two seniors, this is indeed what this disciple saw back then. As for any restrictions, formations, or other immortal Dao methods, this disciple doesn't know. I reckon that Yenming Jusher back then might not know either. Wen Wenhai said with a wry smile. "Well, that's indeed true." Master Chongsheng and Nun Jingyi both nodded. After a while, Master Chongsheng asked apologetically, "Faction leader Zhang, this old monk has overstepped. I wonder, what did faction leader O obtain in this secret plane back then?" Chapter 12:11. Hongfu destroyed the Tan family, Yenming Villa, and Wan Jianfeng. "What, you don't know anything?" Lu Qingyang coldly snorted. "What? Jianghu is filled with grudges and vengeance. If you don't have strength, don't be blinded by greed and go looking for treasures. Otherwise, you'll only end up with your family destroyed." Nun Jingyi also coldly snorted. "Actually, I just want to confirm whether or not this jungle is worth the risk." Master Chongsheng pulled a long face and asked. After thinking for a moment, Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, "Actually, it's nothing. It's just a few qi-generating pills and a few bone-strengthening pills. Hee, in addition to this, your school seems to have another jade box." Nun Jingyi laughed. Zhang Xiaohu calmly said, "Inside that jade box is a sword manual. My Misty School had already arranged for the young Eagle Hall disciples to practice it before Boss O passed away." Nun Jingyi nodded slightly. It seemed that this sword manual, she knew about it. Yes, O Peng, and the other's explosive increase in internal strength, should be the effect of this qi-generating pill. Master Chongsheng also nodded. Since this kind of pill is in the small house, there might be more hidden in the array. That's right, Vice Boss Wen, in the small house, what else is there? Nun Jingyi asked again. This. Wen Wenhai thought for a moment, then looked at Zhang Xiaohu and said, "There's nothing in the house. Apart from some incense burners, a jade table, a square table, and 3 chairs, there's nothing else." At this point, Wen Wenhai seemed to have thought of something and said excitedly, "That's right, on the wall on the right, there are 3 portraits hanging. It's just that they're too old to be seen clearly." Portraits? Not only was Nun Jingyi surprised, but Zhang Xiaohua, who was standing far behind them, was also surprised. "Who are the people in the portraits?" Nun Jingyi asked nervously. "This, one seems to be a swordsman with a saber, another seems to be a scholar with a folding fan, and the last seems to be a masked woman." Wen Wenhai thought for a moment and said, "Is the woman holding something in her hand?" Nun Shuqing asked. "Oh, it seems, it's a long whip." "Ah!" Nun Jingyi and Nun Shuqing's faces were filled with joy. Seeing Wen Wenhai's confusion, they couldn't help but sneer, "That scholar with the folding fan is your Misty School's founder, Yang Haoya. You don't even know how to kowtow in front of him, this is really blasphemy against your founder." "Me?" Wen Wenhai's expression changed. But, thinking that it was impossible for the other party to lie to him, he couldn't help but feel ashamed. Zhang Xiaohu laughed and said, "Our Misty School's immortal inheritance has been lost for a long time. It's normal that Deputy Faction Leader Wen has not seen the portrait of Founding Master Yang. Could it be that all the inner disciples of your school have seen the portrait of Founding Master Yu? Ancestral Master Moon?" Nun Jingyi was slightly stunned. She looked at Zhang Xiaohu in a different light. "You actually know the name of the founder of the incense cult?" Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said nothing. "Alright, since we know that there's a portrait of the founder of the immortal path in the secret land, then, there must be something extremely important inside. We have a reason to take the risk and enter." Master Chongqing laughed and looked around. He walked to the north side of the forest and sat down cross-legged. The other masters also sat down next to him. Nun Jingyi saw this and smiled. She led Peacock and the others to the opposite side of the Dalan temple and sat down. When she was seated, she didn't forget to say in a low voice, "Faction leader Zhang, all the inner disciples of the incense cult have seen the portrait of Founding Master Yu." "Oh?" Zhang Xiaohu was taken aback. Then, he remembered what Zhang Xiaohua said about the manor beside the carefree lake. "I'm impressed." Zhang Xiaohu cupped his hands and led Li Jian and the others to form a triangle with the other two factions. Faction leader Zhang San couldn't get a word in edgewise. He waited for the three factions to sit down before finding a place to lead his disciples. However, when he saw Zhang Xiaohu not far away, he sighed and ordered his disciples to go first. He then walked to the side of the Misty School's disciples. "What are you doing here?" Lu Qingyang asked angrily. This humble one has something important to discuss with faction leader Zhang." Faction leader Zhang San looked at Zhang Xiaohu behind Lu Qingyang and whispered, "There's nothing to discuss. The Misty School and the Righteous Alliance are mortal enemies." Lu Qingyang scolded. There's no such thing as an eternal enemy in this Jianghu. How can there be an eternal ally?" Faction leader Zhang San chuckled and said, "This humble one is just proposing a deal to faction leader Zhang. If faction leader Zhang doesn't agree, just listen. There's no need to take it seriously." Sigh. Zhang Xiaohu stood up and cupped his hands. "Faction leader Zhang, there's really nothing to discuss between our two factions. If it weren't for the importance of this forest, we wouldn't have come at all. Since faction leader Zhang knows the importance of this forest, what if this humble one uses the things in the forest to make a deal with your faction?" Faction leader Zhang San smiled. Zhang Xiaohu pretended to be surprised and said curiously, "The things in the forest are extremely important. Could it be that the Righteous Alliance has something more important than these things? If faction leader Zhang is interested, this humble one will say it. Otherwise, this humble one will turn back. Faction leader Zhang, please speak." This lord really wants to hear it." Zhang Xiaohu smiled. "Well, it's like this. The things in the secret plane, the Righteous Alliance owns 25% of them. If faction leader Zhang agrees to this humble one's deal, this humble one will give faction leader Zhang 10% of them. What do you think?" Seeing that faction leader Zhang San was somewhat reluctant, Zhang Xiaohu's eyes narrowed and he asked curiously, "What do you need this lord to do?" It's very simple. This humble one wants faction leader Zhang to return the thousands of disciples of the Righteous Alliance. What do you think?" Bah! Without waiting for Zhang Xiaohu to speak, Lu Qingyang spat out thick phlegm and scolded, "Those are thousands of disciples. They're already the disciples of the Misty School's Martial Arts Hall and Great Martial Arts Hall. You just touched your lips and you want me to return them to you? Moreover, we still don't know what's in the secret plane. How can those things be compared to these disciples?" "That's right, faction leader Zhang. You see, this lord hasn't even opened his mouth and Elder Lu has already seen that this deal is unfair. What else do we have to talk about?" Zhang Xiaohu smiled. Faction leader Zhang San was slightly anxious and said in a low voice, "Faction leader Zhang, at first glance, this deal is indeed inappropriate. But think about it again. Although my thousands of disciples have already become the disciples of your two halls, but, can you be at ease with them? Don't you still have to take out a lot of people to supervise them? Moreover, you still don't feel at ease letting them go. Rather than feeling this uncomfortable, it's better to directly let them go and return them to this humble one. Wouldn't it be better to obtain the treasures in this secret plane?" Seeing Zhang Xiaohu's face reveal a strange smile, he continued, "Moreover, although the number of these thousands of disciples is large, they're not of one mind. They can't be compared to the disciples cultivated by your Misty School. If you obtain some treasures in the secret plane, such as the chi-generating pill that you just spoke of, then all of a sudden, you can cultivate your trusted disciples into top-notch experts. Wouldn't that be much more convenient than using these thousands of disciples? As Elder Lu said just now, who knows how many treasures there are in this secret plane? Look at the posture of the Dalan Temple and then look at the posture of the cult of incense. Faction leader Zhang, don't you think that there's a huge secret in this secret plane? If our two factions don't work together, then wouldn't we be eaten up by the other two factions until nothing is left? Of course, this humble one can't guarantee that there are enough treasures inside that can be compared to the thousands of disciples. However, for the thousands of useless disciples, I think that faction leader Zhang should take this risk." Zhang Xiaohu revealed a thoughtful expression. Seeing this situation, alliance leader Zhang San added fuel to the fire. "Faction leader Zhang, this is a ladder that our alliance is handing to your noble faction. We know that your Misty School's strength has increased greatly, and our righteous alliance has suffered heavy losses. However, if our righteous alliance stacks everything on a single throw and attacks your Misty School with all our strength, do you think those thousands of disciples you've recruited will listen to you or to our alliance?" This. Zhang Xiaohu pretended to panic. Of course, this is just our alliance's assumption. If we really do this, our righteous alliance will suffer heavy losses. I'm afraid that we won't be far from being destroyed. This isn't something that our alliance wants to see. Presumably, faction leader Zhang won't do this and let the Dalan Temple and the cult of incense reap the benefits. Alliance leader Zhang San laughed. 20%. Zhang Xiaohu seemed to understand alliance leader Zhang San's meaning. He also knew that alliance leader Zhang San would fight to the death, so he called out decisively. Alliance leader Zhang San was stunned, then laughed softly. Faction leader Zhang is indeed a smart person. No wonder even Abbess Jingyi had to suffer at your hands. However, our righteous alliance only has 25% in total. I don't think there's any hope for those formations and restrictions, so, 20% is really too much. Alliance leader Zhang San, these are thousands of disciples. If it were a few hundred, I would have agreed long ago. Why would I waste my breath here? If it were a few hundred, our alliance wouldn't have come here and lowered our face to make this deal with you. Forget it, who told our alliance to be in the wrong first? 15% is our bottom line. If you don't, we'll turn around right now. Alliance leader Zhang San turned around and was about to leave. Don't. Zhang Xiaohu pulled alliance leader Zhang San back and laughed. 15% it is. To be honest, these thousands of disciples are troublesome in my Misty School. If the righteous alliance takes them back, I'll be more than happy. Alright, faction leader Zhang San is straightforward. Let's clap our hands and make an oath. Alliance leader Zhang San raised his right hand. Zhang Xiaohu also raised his right hand. Just as they were about to clap hands, Li Jian reminded them, faction leader Zhang San, you must consider this carefully. Zhang Xiaohu was stunned. Alliance leader Zhang San raised his hand, and their palms collided. Alliance leader Zhang San retracted his right hand and cupped his hands. Once this matter is settled, our alliance will send a disciple to receive them. I hope faction leader Zhang San won't go back on his words. You. Zhang Xiaohu retracted his right hand, and a look of regret appeared on his face. Huh. Alliance leader Zhang San chuckled and returned to his disciple's side. He seemed to have a card up his sleeve, and knew that Zhang Xiaohua would definitely agree to it. However, Zhang Xiaohua, who was at the side, was already overjoyed. Chapter 12:12. Looking at Zhang Xiaohu's remorseful face and his whispered explanation to Li Jian and the others, Zhang Xiaohua almost laughed out loud. After these thousands of disciples returned to the Righteous Tao Alliance, they would become the backbone of the Righteous Tao Alliance. If they were to nurture their own team one by one, in a few years, the Righteous Tao Alliance would already belong to Ethereal Sect even without Ethereal Sect attacking. The Dalan Temple and the incense cult seemed to know that the leader of the Alliance of Righteous Sects, Zhang Xiaohu, had something to discuss with the Misty School. Therefore, they lowered their heads and regulated their breathing, ignoring the whispers between Zhang Xiaohu and the elders of the Misty School. Beside the quiet forest, the low, intermittent chirping of insects served as a foil to the mystery of the forest. Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. She extended her divine sense and scanned the area 1,000 feet around the four sects. She seemed to have found something. 1,000 feet away, there was a large area of rocks. There were no trees, and the huge rocks reflected the moonlight slightly. Wherever the cold wind blew, the grass between the rocks swayed. There was nothing else. Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense swept through the area and found that it was normal. However, Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat, and he felt that there was something wrong. Hero Wen, cough, Vice Sect Leader Wen, about 1,000 feet north of here, is there a large area of rocks? Zhang Xiaohua asked in a low voice. About that, reporting. Elder, I came here at night from Index Finger Peak. I didn't check the surroundings. Wen Wenhai said apologetically. Is there anything strange there? Zhang Xiaohu asked. No. Zhang Xiaohua was about to answer when her expression suddenly changed. She hurriedly said, I have something to do. I'll come back later. As she said that, she put her hand in Zhang Xiaohu's hand and turned around to cast the flying spell. She left on her own. Zhang Xiaohu stared blankly for a moment. Pinching the soft object in his hand, he immediately knew that it was the extremely precious sheepskin scroll. He casually stuffed it into his bosom without a trace. Then, he heard the elder behind him ask in a displeased tone, Sect Leader Zhang, where did fellow Taoist Panin go? Now is the time to cover his tracks. Why did he leave? Zhang Xiaohu was stunned. He couldn't say that it was midnight and his brother needed to sleep, right? He could only say, I'll let you know, Grandmaster. Panin. Taoist priest discovered that something was amiss 1,000 feet away. He personally went to take a look. What? 1,000 zhang away? Master Longevity sucked in a breath of cold air while Nun Jing-yi cried out in alarm. What? Am I wrong? Zhang Xiaohu was shocked. He turned his head and asked Wen Wenhai, what did you say just now? Sect leader, Taoist Panin just asked me if I passed by 1,000 feet away from here. He felt that there was something wrong there. Master Tiangang, Master Yuan Dao, Master Yuan Ming, and Nun Shuqing all had ugly expressions. Standing here, one's divine sense could see 1,000 feet away. That was a waste of time. Moreover, he knew the flying spell. This Taoist priest Panin. Which generation's senior master was he? Nun Jingyi's face turned green when she thought of 1,000 feet away. She couldn't understand when the Misty School had such a senior who had such a deep relationship with them. Master Longevity looked into the distance at Zhang Xiaohua, who had long disappeared, and said in a low voice, with this senior's help, this trip to the secret plane will be safe. Then, everyone sat down in their respective places. However, after waiting for a long time, the full moon had already set in the west. Zhang Xiaohua still hadn't returned. Shundao sect? That's right, it's between the clouds and the water. Master Jing Yi also gritted her teeth. This Bai Yanqiu is really everywhere. Changgung, Changxing. Master Tiangong's expression also changed. Master Yuandao waved his hand and pulled out the demon-subduing pestle from his back. Master Yuanming also threw his hand, and the Mao bead also turned into the size of a plate and flew into the air. However, before the two of them could fly 100 feet away, they heard a voice in the distance. Don't worry, great masters. We'll come. Wasn't that the voice of Bai Yanqiu between the clouds and the water? The two great masters, Yuandao and Yuanming, paused in the air for a moment before flying back to stand beside Master Tiangang. They didn't put away the demon-subduing pestle in their hands and the Mao bead in the air. Master Longevity and Master Jingyi looked coldly at Bai Yanqiu, who was flying over from afar, and Changgung and Changxing, who were captured by Hao Feng and Daoist Hao Yu. They didn't say a word. When Bai Yanqiu flew closer, he cupped his hands and smiled. So the incense cult, Dalan Temple, and Misty School, other than my four immortal Dao sects, between the clouds and the water are all saber-rising. Why is the Righteous Alliance also here? Today's moonlight is beautiful, but how did this barren mountain attract the most famous four immortal Dao sects in Jianghu? Bai Yanqiu, my Dalan Temple's Changgung and Master Changxing. How are they? Master Changxing couldn't help but ask when he saw the two great masters being captured and their divine sense blocked by Hao Yun. It's nothing. They just suffered some minor injuries. Bai Yanqiu chuckled. Our disciples between the clouds and the water were admiring the moon, but these two great masters came to disturb us and disturbed our mood. Daoist Hao Yun just punished them slightly. The mountain river map. Master Jing Yi clenched her teeth. That day on Mount Yao, Bai Zhangmen used the mountain river map to hide the figures of the disciples between the clouds and the water. He wanted to seize the initiative when the immortal mansion of Mount Yao appeared. Who knew that the immortal mansion wasn't on Mount Yao, but in the void above Mount Yao? Bai Zhangmen's mountain river map exposed his whereabouts. Why didn't I think of that? This mountain river map is the best at hiding one's aura. With the surrounding terrain, even the divine sense of the immortal path can't detect it. Master Jing Yi is really brilliant, but I also didn't expect that these two monks would suddenly appear when we were hiding well. Where's Master Panin? Zhang Xiaohu asked in a timely manner. Master Panin? Bai Yanqiu was stunned. He shook his head and said, Master Panin flew away from us. Zhang Xiaohu frowned and turned to look at Master Changsheng, expressing his innocence. At this time, Master Changsheng didn't want to investigate further. He only sneered and said, between the clouds and the water captured two great masters of my Dalan Temple. Do you want to declare war on my Dalan Temple? I wouldn't dare, Bai Yanqiu replied with a smile in his eyes. I'm not talented. I know that my words carry little weight, so I have no choice but to ask the two great masters to be my bargaining chip. As long as Master Changsheng agrees to my conditions, I'll immediately release the two great masters. Master Changsheng sneered, my Dalan Temple can be easily coerced. Bai Yanqiu, what do you want? Please say it quickly. If it's feasible, we can agree to it. You should leave as soon as you get the benefits. Otherwise, our four sects will join forces and destroy your descendants between the clouds and the water. Abbess Jing Yi, why are you so angry? What else could I have come here for? I just want to enter the secret land with you and get some benefits. What secret land? Bai Zhangmen, what is he talking about? Why can't I understand? Master Jing Yi laughed. Is that so? Master Jing Yi, you're not being honest. You're bullying my descendants between the clouds and the water. Have they ever been destroyed? Bai Yanqiu laughed and waved his hand. Ping er, come here. Ping er. Everyone was stunned. From afar, a figure slowly walked over using qinggong. Looking at the figure, his qinggong was very poor. Presumably, his martial arts weren't high either. However, when that person walked into the arena, the Righteous Alliance's alliance leader Zhang San shouted, "Situ Ping? You're actually a disciple of Between the Clouds and the Water?" Then, Misty School's Wenwenhai was also shocked, "Leader Situ." Then, he shook his head and said, I really didn't expect it. Everyone, who do you think this person is? It's the leader of the evil tiger gang, Situ Ping, who was led by Wan Jianfeng's disciple, Ma Xiangyang, when Wenwenhai and Yanming Jusher entered the forest for the first time. How could it be you? Situ Ping, you actually dared to deceive this old man? Alliance Master Zhang San repeated this sentence. When he joined forces with the incense cult and the Dalan temple to force Peng to death, he had already lost sight of Situ Ping. At that time, he had sent many people to look for him, but there was no news. Later, when the Righteous Alliance took over the Misty School, there was no need for Situ Ping to exist anymore. Thus, he threw this person to the back of his mind. What he didn't expect was that Situ Ping would appear when he least expected it. Please cast a monthly vote, please cast a recommendation vote, please collect, please tip, thank you. Chapter 12-13. Situ Ping, you're the leader of the evil tiger gang, but you're also a disciple of Between the Clouds and the Water. You told us about Wan Jianfeng, the sheepskin scroll, and the forest. Was it by Yanqiu's order? When we confronted the Dalan temple and the incense cult, we couldn't find you. Were you taken away by Between the Clouds and the Water? Alliance leader Zhang is indeed a smart person. It's exactly as you said. However, the Evil Tiger Gang and the Evil Tiger Mountain Villa have been used by the Alliance of Righteous Sects for a long time. I miss them very much. I've always wanted to go back and see if they're still the same as before. By Zhang Men, you're too calculative. Alliance leader Zhang San sighed. Alliance leader Zhang San is too kind. Ping, only found out about it by chance. That's why he hurriedly reported it to me. If I had known about it earlier, you wouldn't have been here. Actually, Bai Zhangmen didn't have to use so many tricks. He could have just destroyed the 4 sects and obtained the 4 sheepskin scrolls. Alliance leader Zhang San said, puzzled. That's what I thought, but... Alliance leader O of the Misty School and Yang Ruping are both descendants of the Immortal Path sects. If I acted rashly, Between the Clouds and the Water would have been exposed. If your 3 sects caught wind of this, with the strength of your 3 sects, Between the Clouds and the Water, would I still be safe and sound? She then said hatefully, to be honest, I've also done a lot of tricks in the other 3 sections. Unfortunately, my luck wasn't good. None of the sheepskin scrolls fell into the hands of Between the Clouds and the Water, so, today, I had no choice but to do this. Alliance leader Zhang San gritted his teeth. He had been plotting since he got the information about the sheepskin scrolls from Situ Ping, as well as the secret of the Immortal Path. The destruction of the Misty School was also part of Bai Yanqiu's plan. Now that the incense cult, the Dalan temple, and the Misty School were greatly weakened, the alliance of righteous sects was even more miserable. This was all thanks to Bai Yanqiu of Between the Clouds and the Water. How could he not bear a grudge? Bai Yanqiu of Between the Clouds and the Water was the instigator of the decline of the alliance of righteous sects. Needless to say, Bai Yanqiu had been labeled as such by alliance leader Zhang San. Then, alliance leader Zhang San said coldly, "What? Bai Zhangmen, what do you mean? You've been plotting for so long, involving the famous 4 sects in Jianghu, and now you've captured the 2 masters of the Dalan temple. Are you planning to take the treasure for yourself?" Alliance leader Zhang San, you're exaggerating. How can I, Between the Clouds and the Water, have such a big appetite? Between the Clouds and the Water is not the Beta School, and this secret plane is not the Yaoshan Immortal Mansion. How can I, the leader of this sect, take all the treasure for myself? Then, Bai Yanqiu looked at Master Changsheng and Nun Jingyi, and said with a smile, between the clouds and the water is also a big sect with immortal inheritance, so we're also qualified to enter the secret plane. I don't have many requests, I just want to enter the secret plane with the alliance of righteous sects and the Misty School, and have the same treatment as them. This. Nun Jing-yi was a little hesitant. She looked at Master Chongsheng and said in a low voice, "The two masters Chonggung and Chongxing are in the hands of between the clouds and the water. Master, please make the decision on this matter." Master Chongxing pondered for a moment, and told her about the agreement between the sects, and said, "If between the clouds and the water joins, each sect should get 20%, Master Chongsheng." "You can't say that." This 50%. I definitely can't agree. Haha, Master, you're mistaken. Bai Yanqiu said with a smile like a flower, "The 50% I'm talking about is 50% of all the treasures that the Dalan Temple obtained in the secret ground." Roar! Master Chongsheng roared like a lion raising its head, "Bai Zhangmen, you've gone too far." A gust of wind blew from Master Chongsheng, blowing straight toward Bai Yanqiu. The sound also shook Bai Yanqiu's head slightly. Just as Bai Yanqiu moved slightly, Master Chongsheng moved. He stretched out his hand, and his 5 fingers directly grabbed toward Bai Yanqiu's face. "Be careful, Master." Daoist Hao Feng, who was beside Bai Yanqiu, reminded. As soon as Master Chongsheng roared, Bai Yanqiu felt that something was wrong. Without waiting for him to open his eyes, his body floated up and flew backward. Seeing this, Master Chongsheng's body did not change. He urged the vital energy in his meridians and also floated up. Then, a suction force appeared between his 5 fingers out of thin air, covering Bai Yanqiu's face. Bai Yanqiu was even more shocked when he saw this. He blurted out, "Dragon controlling hand." Actually, how could this be an ordinary dragon controlling hand? When the suction force covered Bai Yanqiu's face, an indescribable throbbing appeared in Bai Yanqiu's heart. It was as if the palm was gradually expanding, so big that it grabbed Bai Yanqiu's entire gaze. This is bad. Seeing Master Chongsheng use such a method, how could Bai Yanqiu not know how powerful it was? As his body retreated rapidly, he was about to take out a Dharma artifact from his back. However, Master Chongsheng's palm was right in front of Bai Yanqiu's face. Bai Yanqiu did not even have time to retreat. How could he have the time to take out a Dharma artifact? You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.